Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the first time I stood before the Thornhill mansion, a hulking Victorian silhouette against the pale autumn sky. The air held that peculiar stillness that seems to gather around abandoned places, a silence that isn't quite silence, but rather an absence waiting to be filled. As a detective specializing in cold cases, I'd seen my share of forgotten spaces, but something about this one felt different. The mansion hadn't just been abandoned. It had been deliberately left behind, like something too dangerous to carry forward. My shoes crunched softly on the gravel driveway as I approached. County records showed the property had remained vacant for nearly 3 decades until the Mercer family purchased it 4 months ago at an estate auction. A young couple with a 5-year-old daughter and dreams of restoration. Now they wouldn't even enter the property, choosing instead to stay with relatives while I investigated their claims. We heard voices, Elaine Mercer had told me, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her coffee cup during our interview. At first, just at night, we thought it was the pipes or the wind. Old houses make noise, right? The tremor in her voice suggested she knew better. But then they started saying our names. I paused at the bottom of the porch steps, gazing up at the weathered facade. The front door hung slightly ajar, left that way by the local officer who'd done the preliminary sweep yesterday. Nothing suspicious found, according to his report, just an old house with old house problems. The key was cold between my fingers, unnecessarily heavy and ornate. Inside, the air was stale and carried the faint mineral scent of undisturbed dust. Weak afternoon light filtered through grimy windows, creating dappled patterns across the parquet flooring. I moved slowly, deliberately, my notebook open but still blank. The foyer opened into a grand staircase, its banister carved with intricate patterns of leaves and vines that seemed to shift in the uneven light. "When did you first notice something was wrong?" I had asked Daniel Mercer, Elaine's husband. "The second week," he'd replied, his lawyer's precision momentarily breaking through his unease. "We just finished painting Lucy's room, our daughter. That night I heard what sounded like someone quietly reading aloud. When I went to check, the room was empty, but the walls, they seemed to be vibrating, like something was trying to push through." I ran my gloved hand along the wainscoting in the main hallway, feeling the subtle ridges of aged wood beneath my fingertips. The Mercers had begun renovations almost immediately. Fresh paint, new fixtures, repairs to the ancient plumbing system. It was during the removal of drywall in the upstairs bedroom that they made the first discovery. Climbing the stairs, I followed the route the responding officer had documented. Second floor, third door on the right, Lucy's room. The walls had been partially stripped, exposing the original wooden slats beneath. And there, carved into the wood with meticulous precision, were words that shouldn't have existed. "Lucy likes strawberry ice cream but not chocolate. Lucy is afraid of the dark. Lucy talks to her stuffed rabbit when no one is listening." I traced the letters with my penlight, noting the careful, almost loving attention to detail in each stroke. The carving wasn't new. The edges had the softness of age, suggesting they'd been there for years, decades perhaps, long before Lucy Mercer was born, long before anyone could have known her preferences or fears. "We thought someone was spying on us," Elaine had explained, her voice hardly above a whisper. "We checked for cameras, for listening devices, found nothing. Then we discovered more writings in our bedroom." I moved to the master bedroom, where larger sections of wall had been exposed. The carvings here were more extensive, forming paragraphs rather than simple statements. "Daniel fears he is becoming his father. He checks his hairline every morning for signs of recession. He lies awake wondering if Elaine still loves him. Elaine keeps secrets in her bottom drawer beneath old sweaters. She sometimes stands in the shower long after the water has run cold, thinking of the life she might have had. My camera clicked softly as I documented each section of text. The handwriting remained consistent throughout, neat, flowing cursive that belonged to another era. The Mercers had owned the house for just 4 months, yet these writings detailed intimate aspects of their lives, thoughts they claimed to have never shared with anyone. "When did you hear your names being called?" I asked, settling into the chair across from the kitchen table where both Mercers sat, their untouched tea growing cold between us. 3 weeks in, Daniel said. I was in the basement looking at the electrical panel. I heard Elaine calling me, but when I went upstairs, she was out grocery shopping. For me, Elaine added, it was Lucy's voice. I heard her crying, calling for me, but she was at school. The basement door protested with a long, drawn-out creak as I pulled it open. A cool draft carried the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet. My flashlight carved a path down the wooden steps, illuminating concrete floors and stone foundation walls. Unlike the upper levels, the basement remained untouched by renovation attempts. According to the property records I'd reviewed, the house had been built in 1887 by Jeremiah Thornhill, a successful businessman with interests in newspaper publishing. The family had lived here for 3 generations before the last Thornhill died in 1968. After that, the house had changed hands several times, but no one stayed longer than 2 years. The records didn't indicate why. In the far corner of the basement, my light caught something unusual, a section of wall that appeared newer than the rest. The mortar between the stones was a different color, not yet darkened by decades of moisture and neglect. I approached carefully, running my fingers along the seam where old construction met new. I recalled something Daniel had mentioned almost in passing. The contractors found a walled-up room while checking the foundation. Nothing inside but old newspapers and what looked like a writing desk. We didn't think much of it at the time. My light reflected off something small and metallic protruding from between 2 stones. Gently I worked it free, an antique fountain pen, its gold nib still intact beneath layers of tarnish. Next to where it had been wedged, I noticed faint marks in the mortar, words scratched hurriedly. The house knows, the house remembers, the house speaks. I pocketed the pen and continued my inspection. In the beam of my flashlight, I noticed something on the floor near the wall, a thin rectangle of discolored concrete, approximately the size of a large book. Kneeling, I realized it was a small trapdoor, its outline barely visible beneath years of dust. It took considerable effort to lift, the hinges protesting after decades of disuse. Below was a narrow space, no more than 2 feet deep. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but remarkably preserved in the dry, sealed environment. The first entry was dated September 14, 1932. I've discovered something extraordinary about this house. When I press my ear to the walls at night, I can hear conversations from years past, my grandmother arguing with my grandfather in the parlor, though both have been dead for a decade. At first I thought it was memory playing tricks, but now I'm certain. The house preserves echoes, it listens, and sometimes it speaks back. The entries continued, documenting the writer's, Edward Thornhill's, growing obsession with the house's apparent ability to absorb and later replay the lives lived within its walls. He described experimenting with different rooms, different times of day, gradually developing a method to not just hear but communicate with the house. May 3, 1933. I found that when I write on the wooden laths before the plaster is applied, the house remembers more clearly. It's as if I'm giving it a script to follow, words to repeat back in the voices it has collected over the years. The journal entries grew increasingly erratic as months passed, with Edward describing how he began removing sections of wall throughout the house, carving messages, predictions, and questions into the exposed wood before covering them again. November 28, 1933, the house has begun to answer my questions. When I ask about future occupants, it shows me glimpses, fragments of lives not yet lived within these walls. I see a young family, a child with golden hair, a man who doubts himself, a woman who harbors regrets. I carved their secrets into the bones of this house, so when they arrive, they will know they were expected. The final entry was dated January 15, 1934. They're coming to take me away tomorrow. My sister believes I've lost my mind, destroying our family home with my carvings and ramblings. Perhaps she's right, but the house knows the truth. The house will remember me. And someday, when the walls are opened again, someone will understand what I've discovered here. Records showed Edward Thornhill was committed to the state psychiatric hospital the following day, where he remained until his death in 1947. The house passed to his sister, who never lived in it but kept it until her death in 1968. I closed the journal, dust motes dancing in the beam of my flashlight. As I did, I became aware of a sound, faint but unmistakable, coming from somewhere above me. A voice, soft and muffled, as if speaking through layers of wood and plaster. It was saying my name. Standing in the center of the basement, surrounded by stone walls that had witnessed nearly a century and a half of human experience, I felt a profound sense of being listened to, of being known by something that had no right to know me. The air seemed to thicken around me, heavy with the weight of accumulated whispers. I climbed the stairs slowly, following the voice that continued to call out, leading me back to Lucy's room. In the fading afternoon light, I noticed something I'd missed before, a small section of wall I hadn't yet examined, partially hidden behind the door. There, carved into the wood in the same flowing script, was a message that hadn't been there during my first inspection. The detective doesn't believe, but he will. He has his own secrets the house has already heard. The house always listens. The house always knows. I placed my hand flat against the carving, feeling nothing but the cool, unyielding surface of century-old wood. Yet somehow I knew with absolute certainty that somewhere within these walls, the house was placing its ear against mine, listening to the quickening of my pulse, the catch in my breath. And somewhere in a room I hadn't yet discovered, new words were being carved, words that told my story, my secrets, my fears, waiting for the next detective who would come looking for answers the house had already prepared. I left the Thornhill mansion as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the overgrown garden. I would tell the Mercers what I'd found, the journal, the history of Edward Thornhill, the logical explanation for what appeared to be impossible knowledge. I would recommend further inspection of the walls, perhaps consultation with historical preservationists who might find value in Edward's disturbed but remarkable craftsmanship. What I wouldn't tell them was that as I walked to my car, I heard my name called once more, not from the house this time, but from the pen in my pocket. And when I examined it later that night, I found tiny words etched into its barrel that hadn't been there before. Come back soon, the house misses you already. I never returned to the Thornhill mansion. The Mercers sold it without ever moving back in. but sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I swear I can hear the faint scratch of metal on wood, carving words I'm afraid to read, telling stories only the walls remember. Story 2, I remember the first time I noticed the change in the photograph. It was a Tuesday morning in late October, the kind where the sunlight filters through half-bare trees, casting long shadows across hardwood floors. The photograph had been on my desk for years, a simple 5x7 print in a silver frame, showing my childhood home bathed in the amber glow of a summer sunset. My grandmother had taken it the year before she passed, capturing the Victorian farmhouse where I'd spent my first 18 years. That morning, as the steam rose lazily from my coffee cup, I reached for a pen and my gaze drifted to the familiar image. The porch swing where I'd read countless books, the weathered blue shutters my father repainted every spring, the sprawling oak that had housed my childhood treehouse, and someone standing in the doorway. I blinked slowly, certain my eyes were playing tricks in the early morning light. The doorway had always been empty in this photograph. I'd looked at it thousands of times, had even used it as reference when describing my childhood home to friends. But there it was, a figure, blurred and distant, a vague human shape occupying space where there should have been nothing but shadow. I lifted the frame, studying it more carefully. The figure was indistinct, like a person captured mid-movement. I couldn't make out features, just the suggestion of someone standing there, watching the photographer, watching my grandmother as she captured this moment. "That's strange," I whispered to myself, running my finger across the glass. Had this apparition always been there, overlooked through years of casual glances? I set the photograph down, finished my coffee, and went about my day. 3 days later, I picked up the frame again. The figure was clearer now, still blurry around the edges, but unmistakably a man, tall, thin, wearing what appeared to be dark clothing. He stood more fully in the doorway, no longer partially obscured by shadow. My heart beat a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs as I examined every pixel of the image. The house was exactly as I remembered: the peeling paint on the porch steps, the flower beds my mother had meticulously maintained, but this man was a stranger, an impossibility. I called my sister that evening. "Do you remember anyone being at the house when Grandma took that sunset photo?" I asked, keeping my voice calm despite the unease settling in my stomach. "What sunset photo?" she asked. "The one of the house, you know, the one Grandma took that summer before she died. I have it framed on my desk." A pause. "Oh, that one. No, I don't think anyone was there. It was just us, and you were with me at the lake, remember? Grandma stayed behind because her knees were bothering her." I thanked her and ended the call, then pulled the photograph from its frame. The back held no clues, just the date stamped from the developer and my grandmother's elegant handwriting. The homestead, July 1997. I slid it back into place and returned it to my desk, face down. A week passed before curiosity overcame my growing apprehension. When I turned the frame over, my breath caught. The figure had moved. He was now standing at the top of the porch steps, one hand resting on the railing. Though his features remained indistinct, I could make out the dark hollow of what might have been a smile. The sunlight that bathed the house in warmth seemed not to touch him. He remained a shadow against the golden backdrop. That night I dreamed of the house. In my dream, I stood across the street, watching as a tall figure moved from window to window, his silhouette visible through the curtains my mother had sewn. I tried to call out to warn my dream family inside, but no sound emerged. I woke with my heart pounding against my ribs, sheets damp with perspiration. The next morning I drove to the County Historical Society. My childhood home had been built in 1887 by a lumber baron named Thomas Ellsworth. It had passed through several families before my parents purchased it in 1982. The records showed nothing unusual, no tragic deaths, no mysterious disappearances. Nothing that would explain the figure that seemed to be slowly emerging from the shadows of my photograph. I decided to consult a photography expert. Professor Martin at the local university examined the print under various lights and with a digital scanner. "This is quite interesting," he said, his voice a gentle murmur as he studied the image. "The figure appears to be part of the original photograph, not added later. There's no evidence of tampering or double exposure." "But it wasn't there before," I insisted, my voice steady despite my growing unease. Professor Martin glanced at me over his reading glasses. "Photographs don't change on their own," he said kindly. "Perhaps you simply never noticed this person until now." But I had noticed. The figure was becoming clearer with each passing day, drawing closer to the foreground of the image. By the end of the month, he stood at the bottom of the porch steps, his features still blurred, but his posture unmistakably oriented toward the camera, toward my grandmother as she captured this moment, toward me as I studied his gradual approach. I found myself unable to leave the photograph alone. I would wake in the night and check it by the soft glow of my phone's flashlight. Each morning I dreaded to see some new progression in his march forward. I began to research the psychology of pareidolia, the tendency to perceive familiar patterns where none exist. I read about the degradation of photographic paper, about chemical changes that can occur over time. Nothing explained what I was witnessing. 2 months after I first noticed the change, I received a call from my sister. "I found some of Grandma's old negatives," she said. "There's one of the house at sunset. I thought you might want it since you loved that photo so much." The negative arrived 3 days later in a small manila envelope. I held it to the light, examining the inverted image of my childhood home. There was no figure in the doorway, no man on the porch steps, just the empty, peaceful scene I had originally remembered. That evening I placed the photograph and the negative side by side on my desk. In the print, the figure now stood at the edge of the frame, close enough that I could make out the severe set of his mouth, the hollow darkness of his eyes. In the negative, there was nothing but the house and the dying light of day. I visited my childhood home the following weekend. The current owners, a young couple with twin toddlers, had renovated extensively but maintained the character of the old place. They kindly allowed me to walk through the rooms, now painted in bright, modern colors so different from the muted tones of my youth. "Do you know anything about the history of the house?" I asked casually as we stood in the entryway. "Anyone who lived here before my family?" The wife shook her head. "Not really. The realtor mentioned something about a reclusive previous owner, but that's all. Oh, except for the photographs." My pulse quickened. "Photographs?" "Yes, when we were renovating the attic, we found a box of old photographs hidden in the wall. Black and white portraits mostly, a man and a woman. We turned them over to the Historical Society, thought they might be important to someone." At the Historical Society, the curator led me to a small archive room where the photographs had been catalogued. They were portraits from the early 1900s, formal and stiff in the style of the era. The woman was pretty in a severe way, her hair pulled tightly back, her eyes direct and challenging. The man beside her stood tall and thin, his dark suit impeccably pressed, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder. I recognized him immediately. The same man who had been gradually emerging in my photograph, walking toward the camera as if stepping through time. On the back of one portrait, written in faded ink, was a simple notation: Thomas and Alina Ellsworth, 1905. Thomas Ellsworth, the original owner, the lumber baron who had built the house nearly a century before my family moved in. When I returned home, I placed my grandmother's photograph face down in a drawer. I tried to forget about the man who had appeared from nowhere, who had seemed to walk toward me across decades of time. I told myself it was all a strange coincidence, a trick of light and memory. 3 weeks later, I dreamed of my childhood home again. In the dream, I stood in the front yard, looking up at the house bathed in sunset light. Thomas Ellsworth stood on the porch, looking directly at me. His eyes were dark wells, his mouth a tight line beneath a neatly trimmed mustache. He raised one hand, beckoning. I woke with a start, my heart hammering against my ribs. A compulsion I couldn't explain drew me to the drawer where I had hidden the photograph. With trembling fingers, I lifted it to the light. The house stood empty in the golden sunset. There was no figure in the doorway, no man on the porch steps. The photograph was exactly as I had always remembered it. But in the corner of the frame, just at the edge where the yard met the street, was a new figure. A blurred silhouette that hadn't been there before. It was me watching the house from a distance, as I had in my dream. And behind me, his hand reaching toward my shoulder, stood Thomas Ellsworth, his features now perfectly clear, his eyes fixed on the camera. On whoever might be looking back through time. Story 3, it was delivered to her mailbox, sealed with red wax and written in precise handwriting. The letter detailed events from her life, conversations she had never told anyone, and at the bottom, a single line, "You are not alone." I remember the first time Caroline showed me the letter. The evening light was filtering through her kitchen blinds, casting long shadows across her dining table. She'd called me over, her voice carrying an unusual tremor that I hadn't heard before. As a detective in a small town for 15 years, I developed an instinct for distinguishing between ordinary concern and genuine fear. This was the latter. The paper felt expensive between my fingers, heavyweight stationery with a subtle texture that spoke of quality and intention, not something purchased impulsively. The handwriting flowed across the page in deep blue ink, each letter formed with meticulous precision. Too perfect to be casual, too consistent to be impulsive. "When did this arrive?" I asked, keeping my voice deliberately measured as I examined the red wax seal that had been broken. It bore no insignia, just a smooth circular impression. Caroline pushed a strand of graying hair behind her ear, her fingers visibly trembling. "Yesterday afternoon," she replied, her eyes never leaving the letter in my hands. "I thought it was something from the Historical Society at first. They sometimes send fancy invitations for fundraisers." I nodded slowly, allowing silence to settle between us as I read through the contents again. The writer described a conversation Caroline had with her sister 3 weeks ago on her back porch, a private discussion about possibly selling their deceased parents' lake house. They'd mentioned specific dollar amounts that only the two of them would know. The letter also referenced the blue sweater Caroline had been wearing last Tuesday when she went to her doctor's appointment, and how she'd stopped at Wilson's pharmacy afterward to pick up her prescription. Every detail was mundane but unmistakably accurate and deeply personal. The weight of the paper seemed to increase in my hands as I reached the final line once more. "You are not alone." 4 words that transformed ordinary observations into something sinister. "Have you noticed anyone watching you? Any unfamiliar cars parked on your street?" I asked, placing the letter carefully back into its envelope. The room had grown dimmer, requiring me to reach over and switch on the small table lamp. Its warm glow created a circle of light that somehow made the kitchen feel more isolated from the rest of the world. Caroline shook her head. No, nothing obvious, but since reading that, she gestured toward the envelope, unwilling to touch it. I felt different in my own home, like there are eyes on me through the windows. I've been closing all the blinds before sunset. I made notes in my small leather-bound notebook, the soft scratch of my pen against paper the only sound in the room for several moments. Caroline had lived in Millfield her entire life, a retired librarian, widowed 5 years ago. No known enemies, no recent disputes with neighbors, nothing that would make her a target for harassment. "May I take this with me?" I asked, referring to the letter. "I'd like to check for fingerprints, analyze the paper stock, the wax might give us some leads." She nodded quickly, relief visible in the slight relaxation of her shoulders. "Please, I don't want it in my house." Back at the station, the small evidence room hummed with fluorescent lighting as I carefully examined the letter under magnification. No fingerprints except Caroline's and mine. The paper was expensive but not rare, available at several stationery stores in the county. The wax similarly common. Professional handwriting analysis would take time we might not have. Over the next 3 days, 2 more residents received similar letters. Thomas Grayson, the high school principal, and Margaret Winters, who owned the local bakery. Each letter contained private details that suggested close observation. Each closed with those same 4 words, "You are not alone." A pattern emerged as I pinned their addresses to the large map on my office wall. All 3 recipients lived alone. All were respected community members. All had regular, predictable routines. But the most concerning connection was geographic. Their homes formed a perfect triangle on the map, each approximately 1 mile from the others. Sleep became elusive as I pondered the significance. Was our letter writer selecting targets based on location? Was there something special about that triangular arrangement? I would find myself awake at 3 in the morning, the soft ticking of my bedside clock marking time as theories formed and dissolved in my mind. On the 7th night after the first letter arrived, I was parked outside Caroline's house, conducting another late-night surveillance shift. The street was quiet, with only the occasional rustle of leaves in the autumn breeze breaking the silence. My thermos of coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I remained alert, watching for any movement in the shadows between streetlights. The call from dispatch came at 1:17 a.m. Another letter had been found, not in a mailbox, but placed on a pillow while the recipient slept. Dr. James Keller, our town's only dentist, had awakened to find it resting beside him. The red wax seal unbroken, his address completed a perfect square on my map. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as a realization settled over me. The letter writer wasn't just observing from a distance, they were entering homes, crossing thresholds, standing over sleeping residents. The investigation intensified. We installed security cameras at each recipient's home. Officers were assigned protective details. I extracted myself from normal duties to focus exclusively on the case, converting a corner of my living room into an extension of my office. Whiteboards covered with notes, maps marked with times and locations, coffee cups accumulating as days blended into nights. It was during my review of town records that the first real breakthrough emerged. Each recipient had served on the same jury 12 years ago. A seemingly straightforward case, a young man named Edward Mercer convicted of arson after burning down an abandoned property. He'd served his time and been released 4 years ago. Property records showed he'd left town afterward, but a deeper search revealed he'd returned 6 months ago, purchasing a small cabin on the outskirts of Millfield under his mother's maiden name. The cabin that sat precisely in the center of the geometric shape formed by the recipients' homes on my map. The drive to Mercer's cabin took me along winding roads that narrowed as they climbed into the wooded hills above town. My tires crunched on gravel as I approached, headlights illuminating a modest structure partially obscured by pine trees. No lights shone from within. No vehicle was visible. Standard procedure would have demanded backup, but something told me this confrontation needed to happen alone. The cabin door was unlocked, another warning sign that sent my hand instinctively to my holster. As I pushed the door open, the hinges gave a soft protest. The interior was sparse but meticulously organized. A single chair faced a wall covered entirely with photographs, notes, and maps. In the center was a larger version of my own map, with red pins marking the homes of the letter recipients. Lines drawn between them formed the precise geometric shape I'd identified, and in the center, where Mercer's cabin should be, was a photograph of me. My blood ran cold as I approached the wall. Surrounding my picture were dozens of photos taken over the past several months, me leaving the station, buying groceries, sitting in my backyard reading, my most private moments captured by an unseen observer. And there, on a small writing desk beneath the wall, was a stack of expensive stationery, a fountain pen filled with blue ink and a stick of red sealing wax. Beside them lay a single envelope. I didn't need to see the name written on it to know it was mine. With trembling fingers that betrayed my professional composure, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The same precise handwriting filled the page with details of my investigation, every step I had taken, every theory I had considered. It ended not with the phrase I expected, but with something far more unsettling. Now you understand, you are never alone. Movement in the doorway caught my attention, a silhouette darker than the night behind it. Edward Mercer stood watching me, his expression not one of anger or vengeance, but of quiet satisfaction, as if his work was now complete. "They forgot about me," he said softly, his voice carrying easily in the cabin's silence. 12 years and they all went back to their lives, but I remembered them every day. I never drew my weapon, maybe I should have. Instead, I found myself asking the question that had consumed me since the first letter appeared: why now? His answer came after a thoughtful pause. Because revenge isn't about punishment, it's about awareness. I wanted them to feel what I felt, watched, exposed, vulnerable. A sad smile crossed his face, and I wanted someone to understand. That's why I chose you to find me. Edward Mercer offered no resistance when backup finally arrived. He was charged with stalking, breaking and entering, and criminal harassment. But as they led him away, his eyes met mine with a look that suggested the outcome had always been part of his design. The case was officially closed, the letters stopped. The town gradually returned to normal, but sometimes when I'm alone in my house at night, I find myself checking the locks twice, drawing the curtains more carefully, listening for footsteps that aren't there. Because once you've discovered what it means to be truly watched, a part of you is never quite alone again. Story 4. I remember the first time I stepped into apartment 403. The air felt different there, heavier somehow, as if the space itself was holding its breath. It was late September, the kind of autumn day where golden light spills through half-bare trees, creating patterns on hardwood floors that dance and shift with the afternoon breeze. The landlord, Mr. Harmon, jangled his keys nervously as he showed me around. "No one's lived here for nearly 3 years," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the empty living room. His fingers tapped against his thigh in an irregular rhythm. "Good price for the neighborhood, real good price." I nodded, running my fingertips along the kitchen counter. The marble was cool to the touch, almost too cool for the warm day outside. The apartment was perfect for me, a one-bedroom with large windows and high ceilings in a pre-war building. The kind of place I couldn't typically afford on a journalist's salary. "I'll take it," I said, and Mr. Harmon's relief was palpable, his shoulders dropping an inch as he exhaled. Looking back now, I should have questioned why he seemed so eager to rent the place, why his eyes never quite met mine when I asked about the previous tenants. The first week passed uneventfully. I unpacked my modest collection of books, hung a few photographs, and settled into a routine. The apartment creaked at night, but that's expected in an old building. The walls were thick enough that I rarely heard my neighbors. Sometimes I caught glimpses of them in the hallway, a young couple across the hall, an elderly man with a small terrier one floor down, but mostly the building felt abandoned, as if I were the only one truly living there. It was on the 8th day that I found the first note. I was cleaning out the back of the bedroom closet, pushing aside the built-in drawers to vacuum behind them, when my hand brushed against something taped to the wall. A folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. I pulled it free, unfolded it carefully, and felt a cold wave wash over me. "They're listening through the vents. Don't use the phone after midnight." The handwriting was unmistakably mine, the same looping G's, the same heavy pressure on downstrokes, the distinctive way I crossed my T's, but I hadn't written it. I couldn't have written it. I sat back on my heels, the vacuum humming beside me, forgotten. The note trembled slightly in my hands. Perhaps it was a coincidence, someone with similar handwriting. Yet the more I stared at those words, the more certain I became. This was my handwriting, my pen, my paper, even the same cream-colored legal pad I used for interviews. I folded the note carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. A prank, perhaps. Or maybe the previous tenant had handwriting remarkably similar to mine. There had to be a logical explanation. The second note appeared 3 days later, tucked between the pages of a book I was certain I had already read from cover to cover. This one was longer. "The woman in 512 isn't who she claims to be. I've seen her enter the building at 3 a.m., wearing different clothes, answering to a different name. When she spoke to me in the elevator, she pretended not to remember our conversation from the day before. They're replacing people. Be careful who you trust." Again my handwriting, again impossible. I found myself standing in the hallway that evening, staring at the number on the door across from the elevator. 512, but there was no 512 in the building. The top floor was the 4th. There were only 16 apartments total. I checked the directory in the lobby to confirm. The notes continued to appear. Behind the bathroom mirror, taped beneath the kitchen table, slipped inside my raincoat pocket. Each one in my handwriting, each one more disturbing than the last. They spoke of missing tenants, of conversations overheard through walls that should have been too thick for sound to penetrate, of maintenance men who came to fix appliances that weren't broken and left with more than they arrived with. "They're taking pieces of us," one note read. "Small things you won't notice at first, a memory from childhood, the name of your third-grade teacher, the ability to recall the smell of your mother's perfume." I began to research the building's history. Founded in 1928, the Windermere had once been one of the most prestigious addresses in the city, but by the 1970s it had fallen into disrepair. After a renovation in the early 2000s, it became desirable again, though rumors persisted about unusual occurrences. tenants breaking leases without explanation, maintenance issues that defied conventional solutions. At the city archives, I discovered that an unusual number of tenants had filed change of address forms within 6 months of moving into the Windermere. Most listed no forwarding address. When I cross-referenced these against missing persons reports, I found 7 matches over the past decade. 7 people who had lived in my building disappeared and never been found. None had lived in apartment 403. The library's microfiche records revealed more. A small article from 1993 about a tenant who claimed her apartment was stealing her identity. She reported finding notes she didn't remember writing, hearing her own voice through the walls when she wasn't speaking. She was later committed to a psychiatric facility. Her apartment number wasn't mentioned. I began to keep a journal documenting everything. When I found the notes, where they were located, what they said, I set up a camera in my living room, programmed to record any movement. Each morning I reviewed the footage. Nothing unusual appeared. Yet the notes continued. One evening, returning from work, I found Mr. Harmon waiting by my door. His face was gray, his hands fidgeting with his key ring. "How's the apartment treating you?" he asked, his voice oddly strained. "Fine," I lied, "very comfortable." He nodded, eyes darting to my door, then back to my face. Number issues, nothing unusual. My heart quickened, such as... He swallowed hard. Sometimes tenants report. I don't know how to explain it. Like the place has memories. Like it knows things about them they haven't shared. I felt suddenly cold, despite the warm air drifting through the hallway window. Mr. Harmon, who lived here before me. His eyes slid away from mine. Different people, short-term rentals mostly. And before that, 3 years ago, you said it had been empty for 3 years. He took a step back. I should check on the Wilsons' leak. Let me know if you need anything. He was gone before I could press further. That night I dreamed of a woman sitting at my desk, writing frantically. Her back was to me, but something about the curve of her neck, the way she held her pen, it was familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. In the dream, she turned just slightly, and I caught a glimpse of her profile. It was me, but not me as I am now, me as I might be months from now, years perhaps, thinner, paler, my eyes sunken with exhaustion or fear. I awoke with a start, heart pounding. The digital clock read 3:17 a.m. The apartment was silent save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I reached for my phone to check my email, a habit when I can't sleep, but found a note instead, placed carefully on my nightstand. By the time you read this, I'll have been gone for months. Time moves differently here. The apartment is a loop, feeding on memories, creating echoes. I thought I was the first, but I found notes from others. So many others, all with my handwriting in the end. All becoming me, being unmade, remade. Get out now, before you start writing the notes yourself. I turned on every light in the apartment, searched every corner, every potential hiding place. No one was there, no sign of intrusion. The chain lock on my door was still fastened from the inside. The next day I gave notice. Mr. Harmon accepted my decision without question, without even asking why I was breaking my lease after less than a month. He seemed relieved, if anything. I moved out that weekend, leaving most of my furniture behind. The day before my departure, I found one final note, this one tucked into the novel I was reading, a different book from the one that had contained the second note. You think leaving will save you. It won't. You've been here too long already. The apartment has tasted you now. It knows your patterns, your thoughts. It will find you, or perhaps it already has. Have you checked your handwriting lately? Is it still entirely your own? I didn't take the note with me. I left it on the kitchen counter alongside my keys. 2 months later, settled into a new apartment across town, I received a call from a detective. A new tenant in apartment 403 had reported finding disturbing notes hidden throughout the space. Notes written in handwriting that wasn't theirs. They'd become increasingly paranoid, claiming the apartment was somehow changing them, stealing pieces of their identity. The detective had my name because Mr. Harmon identified me as the previous tenant. When asked if I had experienced anything unusual during my stay, I hesitated. What could I say that wouldn't sound delusional? No, I finally answered. Nothing unusual at all. After hanging up, I opened my journal to record the conversation. As I began to write, I noticed something, a subtle difference in the way I formed my letters. My G's no longer looped the same way. My T's were crossed at a different angle. My handwriting was changing, or perhaps it was changing back. Sometimes, late at night, I catch myself writing notes I don't remember composing. Warnings about vents, about neighbors who aren't who they claim to be, about an apartment that collects identities like others collect rent. I've stopped throwing these notes away. Instead, I save them, waiting for the day I'll return to the Windermere to apartment 403 to leave them for the next tenant, the next me. After all, the apartment will call me back eventually. It always does. It's only a matter of time. Story 5. I remember the first time I saw one of the faces. It was just after sunset, that peculiar time when shadows grow long and the mind becomes susceptible to tricks of light. The renovation of the Blackwood house on Sycamore Lane had been my assignment for 3 weeks now, a standard investigation into what the county records blandly called unusual circumstances surrounding property abandonment. The old Victorian had stood empty for 7 years. Its previous owners, the Mercer family, had left without warning one October night, leaving behind most of their possessions. Dishes still sat in the sink, clothes still hung in closets. The only thing missing was the family themselves, parents and 2 teenage children, vanished without a trace. As I stood in what had once been the master bedroom, my flashlight casting a gentle yellow glow across the peeling wallpaper, I noticed something unusual in the corner. At first I thought it was just another water stain, the kind that blooms across old plaster like a dark flower. But as I moved closer, my breath catching slightly in my chest, I realized it wasn't random at all. It was a face. Not painted or drawn, but somehow formed within the very texture of the wall itself. The cracked paint and exposed plaster created the unmistakable outline of eyes, wide and frightened, a nose, and a mouth frozen in what might have been a scream. I told myself it was pareidolia, that human tendency to see faces in random patterns, just a trick of the mind, nothing more. The county had finally authorized the renovation after years of legal limbo. No relatives had stepped forward to claim the property, and eventually it had fallen to the state. My job was simple: document the renovation process, note any evidence that might explain the family's disappearance, and close the case file that had remained open since 2015. "You finding anything interesting in there, Cooper?" Sarah's voice drifted up from the first floor. My colleague was photographing the living room, cataloging the items left behind. "Just some water damage," I called back, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. I didn't mention the face. There was no reason to sound unprofessional. I made a note in my small leather-bound notebook, the scratch of pen against paper unnaturally loud in the silent house. The contractors would begin work tomorrow, tearing down walls, removing the old wallpaper, erasing whatever secrets this house might hold. That night in my apartment, I dreamed of the Blackwood house. In my dream, I walked from room to room, my footsteps echoing on hardwood floors. Each wall I passed seemed to ripple slightly, as if something beneath the surface was struggling to break free. I returned the next morning as the contractors began their work. The foreman, a heavy-set man named Grisham with calloused hands and tired eyes, met me at the door. "Been doing this work 30 years, he said, shaking his head slowly. "Never felt anything like this house. It's like the walls are watching us." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I had dismissed my own experience as imagination, but hearing someone else express the same feeling sent a whisper of unease down my spine. By mid-afternoon, the contractors had stripped the wallpaper from the dining room. I stood in the doorway, watching as decades of decorating choices were revealed in layers, floral prints giving way to stripes, stripes to solid colors, and beneath it all, the original plaster. And then I saw another one. This face was different from the first, older, lined with what might have been wisdom or pain. It emerged from the plaster like a photograph slowly developing. The workers didn't seem to notice it, continuing their methodical stripping of the adjacent wall. "Could you all take a break?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to document this area before you continue." When they had filed out for their lunch break, I approached the wall cautiously. The face seemed more defined now that we were alone, its features sharpening as if it knew it was being observed. I took several photographs, the camera's flash briefly illuminating the room. That's when I noticed the other faces, dozens of them in various stages of emergence, spreading across the wall like a silent crowd. Some were barely more than suggestions, an eye here, the curve of a jaw there. Others were fully formed, their expressions ranging from serene to terrified. The renovation continued for days, and with each layer of history peeled away from the house, more faces revealed themselves. They appeared in every room, but were most concentrated in what had been the children's bedrooms. Young faces, old faces, some that seemed to shift their expressions when viewed from different angles. I began researching the house's history, digging deeper than the cursory background check that had been done when the case was opened. The Blackwood house, I discovered, had been built in 1887 by Jerome Blackwood, a wealthy industrialist. The land it stood on had once belonged to a small religious community that had disappeared under mysterious circumstances in the 1850s. The house had changed hands numerous times over the decades. Curiously, many of the owners had left suddenly, often without selling or properly transferring ownership. The house would sit empty for years, then be claimed by distant relatives or revert to the state, only to be sold again. And there were the disappearances, not just the Mercer family, but others before them. Not always every member of the household, sometimes just one or two, leaving the others to move away shortly after, never speaking about what had happened. 1 week into the renovation, Grisham approached me as I was examining a particularly detailed face that had emerged in the hallway bathroom. "My men are quitting," he said simply. 3 didn't show up today. The others are talking about voices coming from the walls. I had heard them too, faint whispers that seemed to echo through the house at night, though I had told myself it was just the wind finding its way through the old structure. "We need a few more days," I told him. "The county needs this documentation completed." He looked at me strangely. "You're changing," he said finally. Your face, it's different somehow. That night I stayed in the house alone. I told myself it was to document any unusual phenomena to gather evidence for my report. But the truth was simpler and more disturbing. I felt drawn to the house, to the faces. I wanted to know their stories. I set up a small camp in the living room, away from the walls with their watching eyes. As the night deepened, the whispers grew louder, more distinct, not coming from the walls, I realized, but from within them. At 3 in the morning, I approached the wall in the master bedroom where I had seen the first face. In the beam of my flashlight, it seemed more three-dimensional now, as if it was pushing outward. I reached out hesitantly and touched it. The plaster was warm, almost feverish, and seemed to pulse slightly beneath my fingertips. And then, with a clarity that left no room for doubt or denial, I heard a voice. "Help us." I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs. The voice had been clear, unmistakable, a child's voice, frightened and alone. "Who are you?" I whispered into the darkness. The answer came not in words, but in images that flooded my mind. People, dozens, perhaps hundreds of them, trapped somehow within the very structure of the house. Their bodies gone, their consciousness absorbed into the building itself. Some had been there since the house was built, others had joined over the decades. Including the Mercer family. I saw them in my mind's eye, father, mother, daughter, son. They had discovered the truth about the house too late. Like the others before them, they had tried to leave, but the house, hungry, always hungry, had kept them. Not their bodies, those had been allowed to leave, empty husks walking and talking as if nothing was wrong. But their true selves, their souls if such things exist, remained trapped within the walls, slowly forming the faces I had been seeing. The renovation was disturbing them, tearing away the only physical manifestation they had managed to create over years of patient, painstaking effort. Their only means of communication, their only hope of being seen, recognized, remembered. I left the house as dawn broke, my notes incomplete, my camera full of images I wasn't sure I wanted to review. My report would recommend the renovation be halted, the house condemned and demolished. I would cite structural concerns, environmental hazards, anything that would ensure no one else moved into the Blackwood house. But as I walked to my car, I felt a strange sensation on my face, as if my skin was tightening, hardening. In the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of my reflection. Was that a change in the contours of my features, a subtle shift in the set of my mouth, the look in my eyes? I drive home now, trying to convince myself that everything is normal. But sometimes, when I'm alone in my apartment, I run my fingers over the surface of my face and wonder if I'm truly alone in my skin. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear whispers from within my walls, calling me back to the Blackwood house, back to the room that grew faces. They're waiting for me, and I'm afraid that sooner or later I will go back. Story 6. The park bench was still warm from the afternoon sun when I first opened the case file. A gentle breeze moved through the sycamore trees above me, creating a soft, rustling soundtrack that seemed to echo the whispers of this case. I often come here to review my notes, away from the sterile fluorescent lights of the precinct. Something about the natural light helps me see things more clearly, connections that might otherwise remain hidden in the shadows of my office. I ran my fingers across the manila folder, feeling the slight texture of the paper beneath my fingertips. Inside were the fragments of a life interrupted, photographs, interview transcripts, evidence logs, all meticulously compiled but still failing to tell the complete story of Eliza Warren. Eliza was 28, a librarian at the local university. She lived alone in a small apartment not far from where I now sat. My colleagues initially dismissed her case as another stalking incident that would likely resolve itself. But there was something in her eyes in the photograph clipped to the front of the file, a quiet intelligence, a cautious awareness that told me this was different. According to the statement she gave 3 weeks before her disappearance, it began right here in this park. A man approached her on an early Tuesday morning while she was reading on this very bench. He had calm eyes and a gentle smile, she said, nothing threatening in his demeanor, nothing that would make her walk away. "You're Eliza," he had said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. She acknowledged that yes, she was Eliza, though she couldn't recall meeting him before. That's when things took a turn toward the inexplicable. He began to describe in precise detail a recurring dream she'd been having for months. A dream of standing in an empty house, all the rooms connected by long hallways that seemed to stretch and contract as she moved through them. In the dream, she was searching for something, though she never knew what, and every closed door filled her with a sense of both anticipation and dread. It was a dream she had never shared with anyone, not her mother during their weekly phone calls, not her closest friend Hannah, who'd known her since childhood, not even in the journal she kept by her bedside. "How did you know that?" she had asked him, her voice barely above a whisper. The man's smile hadn't wavered. "You told me," he replied simply. I closed the file and watched as the shadows lengthened across the park grass. The air had grown cooler, carrying with it the faint scent of autumn. 3 days after this encounter, Eliza reported feeling watched. Security footage from the university library showed a man matching the description lingering near the reference desk where she worked, though his face was never clearly captured on camera. 1 week later, she called the police again, this time with a trembling voice. She'd found a handwritten note slipped under her apartment door. "I know what you're dreaming tonight," it read. The handwriting analysis gave us nothing conclusive. 2 weeks after her initial report, Hannah called to say Eliza hadn't shown up for their planned dinner. When officers arrived at Eliza's apartment, they found no signs of forced entry. Her bed was neatly made. A cup of tea sat on her nightstand, half consumed and cold. Her phone was charging on the kitchen counter. The only thing out of place was her journal, open on her desk to a blank page with a single sentence written in handwriting that, according to both Hannah and Eliza's mother, was not her own. "Now you'll tell me all your dreams." I gathered my notes as darkness began to settle over the park. This case had become something of an obsession for me, perhaps because of the way my fellow detectives had so quickly filed it away as just another missing person case that would likely never be solved. Perhaps because of that look in Eliza's eyes in her photograph, the look of someone who sensed something was coming but couldn't quite name it. The forensic psychologist I consulted suggested we were dealing with someone who had been watching Eliza for much longer than she realized. Someone who had perhaps gained access to her apartment before, read her private thoughts, learned her habits and routines. But that didn't explain how he knew about dreams she claimed she'd never documented. 3 months into the investigation, we received a call from a librarian at a small community college 2 counties over. She had found a journal in a return book drop, a journal with Eliza's name inscribed on the inside cover. The pages were filled with detailed descriptions of dreams, written in Eliza's handwriting, dated well after her disappearance. I drove out to the college immediately, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The journal was authentic. Her mother confirmed the handwriting. The final entry was dated just 2 days before we recovered it. He says I can go home soon, it read. Once I've told him everything, once there are no more dreams left to share. We expanded our search to the areas surrounding the college, bringing in additional officers and search dogs. Abandoned buildings, wooded areas, vacant homes, anywhere someone could be kept against their will, but the search yielded nothing. Then came the second journal, this one found in the donation bin of a thrift store less than a mile from the park where Eliza had first encountered the man. The entries were becoming increasingly disjointed, descriptions of dreams blending with what appeared to be fragments of reality. Sometimes I'm not sure if I'm awake or dreaming anymore, one entry read. He sits across from me and listens as I tell him about the house with the endless hallways. He nods as if he's been there himself. Maybe he has. Maybe that's how he knew. The investigation continued, but with each passing month the trail grew colder. The journals stopped appearing. Eliza's case file grew thick with reports that led nowhere, interviews that revealed nothing. A year after her disappearance, I still find myself returning to this park bench, opening her file as the sun begins to set. I've memorized every detail, every statement, every piece of evidence. I've walked through the university library where she worked, sat in the coffee shop where she spent her Saturday mornings, stood in the bedroom of her apartment where she slept and dreamed. Sometimes in my own dreams, I see her walking down those endless hallways she described, opening doors that lead to more doors. I wake with the unsettling feeling that I'm missing something obvious, something that's been right in front of me all along. Yesterday, I received an anonymous letter at the precinct. Inside was a small key and a note that simply read, Storage Unit 237, West Side Facility. I haven't told anyone else about it yet. I'm not sure why. Perhaps because I've come to feel that this connection between Eliza and myself, this shared journey through her disappearance, has become something intimate, something I'm reluctant to share. Tomorrow morning, I'll drive to the storage facility. I'll fit that key into lock number 237, and I'll discover whether this is the end of Eliza's story or just another chapter in an ongoing nightmare. But tonight, as I close her file and watch the last of the daylight fade from the park, I can't help but wonder, if I were to encounter a stranger on this bench right now, a man with calm eyes and a gentle smile, what would he know about my dreams? What would he say I've told him in the silence of my sleep? And would I, like Eliza, stay to listen? Story 7, I remember the call coming in just after midnight. The soft glow of my desk lamp cast long shadows across the incident report as I reached for the phone, my coffee long gone cold. They needed me at the Harmon Estate, a Victorian mansion on the outskirts of town that had supposedly burned to the ground 3 days prior. My partner, Detective Ellis, had already been dispatched. Her message was cryptic. You need to see this for yourself. The gravel crunched beneath my tires as I pulled up to what should have been a charred skeleton of a once grand home. Instead, the 3-story mansion stood perfectly intact against the backdrop of a moonlit sky, its windows reflecting the swirling red and blue lights of police cruisers parked haphazardly on the circular driveway. The sweet scent of freshly cut grass mingled oddly with the lingering smell of smoke that still hung in the air. I found Ellis standing on the porch, her face illuminated by the warm yellow glow spilling from the entryway. I've been with the department 17 years, she said, her voice steady, but eyes betraying her unease. I've never seen anything like this. 3 days ago, the Harmon family, Richard, Alina, and their 2 teenage children had escaped a devastating fire that, according to fire department reports, had reduced their ancestral home to ashes. The insurance adjuster had documented the destruction extensively. Neighbors had watched the mansion burn through the night. Local news had covered the tragedy, yet here it stood, seemingly untouched. The family arrived this morning to salvage whatever they could, Ellis continued, flipping through her notepad with deliberate slowness. Instead, they found their home completely restored. That's when they discovered the photographs. Inside, the house was immaculate. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic patterns across polished hardwood floors. Antique furniture, family heirlooms that should have been destroyed, sat arranged exactly as the family remembered. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked with a resonant, hollow sound that seemed to echo through the entire house. Richard Harmon, a tall man with salt and pepper hair and the demeanor of someone who hadn't slept in days, met us in the library. His fingers trembled slightly as he handed me a leather-bound photo album. "These weren't here before," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the soft patter of rain that had begun to fall outside. "And we never took these pictures." The album contained dozens of photographs of the Harmon family, Richard reading in his study, Alina gardening, their children asleep in their beds. Some showed them having dinner together, laughing around the table. Others captured private moments, arguments, tears, reconciliations. The most recent photos showed them standing outside, watching their home burn. "The time stamps," Ellis pointed out, her finger hovering over the digital dates embedded in the corner of each image. "These were taken over the past year, including ones from during and after the fire." Alina Harmon joined us, wrapping her cardigan tightly around herself despite the comfortable temperature inside. "There's more," she said, leading us upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked beneath our weight with an almost musical quality. The master bedroom looked untouched, not a single item out of place. Alina opened the top drawer of her vanity and removed a journal bound in soft leather. "This is my handwriting," she said, "but I never wrote these entries." The journal contained detailed accounts of events that had occurred after the fire, their temporary stay at a local hotel, conversations they'd had in private, even thoughts Alina claimed she had never shared with anyone. "The last entry was written today," Richard added, his voice hollow. "It describes your arrival, detective." While Ellis continued interviewing the Harmons, I methodically inspected the house. In the basement, I found freshly disturbed soil near the foundation. Behind the house, thin wisps of smoke still rose from a small patch of ground, though the earth there was cool to the touch. The fire chief arrived an hour later, his confusion evident as he examined the structure. "I watched this place burn," he insisted, running his hand along a wall that showed no signs of damage. "We couldn't save anything." We obtained the insurance adjuster's photographs, which clearly showed a charred foundation where the house had once stood. The recovery company confirmed they had been scheduled to begin clearing debris tomorrow. Over the following weeks, our investigation revealed peculiar details. The Harmon house had been built in 1887 by Jonathan Harmon, Richard's great-great-grandfather, a man rumored to have practiced unconventional sciences. Local folklore spoke of his obsession with the concept of architectural memory, the belief that buildings could retain imprints of events that occurred within their walls. More disturbingly, we discovered a series of unsolved disappearances connected to the property over the decades. Every 40 years, almost to the day, someone with connections to the house had vanished without a trace. The most recent had been Richard's uncle, who disappeared while overseeing renovations in 1984. The photographs continued to appear. Each morning, the family would find new ones documenting the previous day's activities. They moved out, staying with relatives in another state, but reported that images of their new location began appearing in the album left behind at the mansion. 3 specialists, an architectural historian, a parapsychologist, and a forensic photographer examined the house. None could explain what they found. The historian confirmed the building materials were consistent with those used in the original construction, yet showed no signs of age. The parapsychologist documented unusual electromagnetic readings throughout the property. The photographer determined the mysterious pictures had not been digitally altered. 6 months into our investigation, Richard Harmon disappeared. Security footage showed him entering the house alone one evening, but no footage existed of him leaving. The leaner insisted he had received a call from someone claiming to have answers about the house. We found his car in the driveway, his keys on the entry table, and a single new photograph in the album, Richard standing in the basement, smiling next to a man whose face was obscured by shadow. The case remains open. The house stands empty now, the remaining Harmons having moved across the country. Occasionally, locals report seeing lights moving inside, though the power was disconnected months ago. Twice a year, a property management company sends workers to maintain the grounds, but no one stays after dark. Last week I received an envelope at the station. Inside was a photograph of me sitting at my desk, reviewing the Harmon file. In the background, clearly visible through my office window, stands a Victorian mansion that doesn't exist on my street. I haven't been back to the Harmon estate since, but sometimes late at night I wake to the sound of gravel crunching outside my home, as if beneath invisible tires. And though I never open the blinds to look, I know what I would see if I did. A house that shouldn't be there, rebuilding itself in the darkness, waiting. Story 8. I remember the first time I laid eyes on the Campbell case file. It was late October, the kind of autumn evening when the air feels like chilled silk against your skin. The precinct was quiet. Most detectives had gone home, leaving behind only the soft glow of desk lamps and the occasional hum of the aging heating system. My coffee had grown cold in its ceramic mug, forgotten during hours of paperwork. The folder wasn't particularly thick. Missing persons cases rarely start with much. Just a standard manila envelope, slightly dog-eared at the corners from being passed between departments. Inside was the story of Alina Campbell, 34, elementary school librarian, reported missing after failing to appear at work for 3 consecutive days. A story that would consume the next 8 months of my life. I can still picture her face from the photograph clipped to the inside cover. Brown hair falling just past her shoulders, eyes that seemed to look through the camera rather than at it. A small smile that didn't quite reach those eyes. The kind of woman who blends into crowds, who neighbors would later describe as quiet and kept to herself. The kind of woman whose absence might go unnoticed for days. The initial report had been filed by the school principal. Alina hadn't called in sick, hadn't requested time off. She simply stopped appearing. When phone calls went unanswered, the principal drove to Alina's small craftsman home on Willow Lane. The curtains were drawn. Mail was beginning to pile up in the box. Her blue Toyota Corolla sat in the driveway, gathering the first leaves of fall on its windshield. I traced my finger over the statement from the neighbor, Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly widow who noticed patterns in the neighborhood the way some people notice weather changes in their joints. Something strange had been happening, she told the responding officer. About a week before she disappeared, Alina started getting presents. The officer had underlined this word twice, with a question mark in the margin. Not flowers or chocolates, Mrs. Abernathy had continued. Just dolls, old-fashioned porcelain dolls with painted faces. The first one appeared on her porch. I saw it when I was walking my terrier. Alina brought it inside. I sat back in my chair, the leather creaking softly beneath my weight. The precinct was tomb quiet now, the only sound the occasional car passing on the wet street outside. I flipped to the crime scene photos. Alina's house had been immaculate, bed made with hospital corners, dishes washed and put away. Nothing suggested a struggle or hasty departure. But there on her dresser sat a collection of antique dolls, 7 of them arranged in a perfect semicircle, all facing the bed, their glassy eyes reflecting the flash of the crime scene photographer's camera. I remember thinking how they didn't seem like the kind of thing Alina would collect. Her home was minimalist, modern, clean lines and muted colors. These dolls, with their frilly Victorian dresses and porcelain faces, seemed invasive somehow, foreign objects in an otherwise coherent space. The case notes mentioned that forensics had found no fingerprints on the dolls, not even Alina's, as if they'd been wiped clean or handled with gloves. No signs of forced entry at the doors or windows. No neighbors had seen anyone unusual entering or leaving the property, just the dolls appearing one by one. I took the case home with me that night, spreading the photos across my kitchen table while rain tapped gently against the windows. Alina's sister had provided additional information. Alina wasn't dating anyone, had few close friends, spent most evenings reading or tending to her small garden of herbs and vegetables. No enemies, no debts, no secrets that her sister knew of. But there was one detail that kept drawing me back. A small notation in the initial officer's report that Alina had recently started volunteering at the Millfield Museum of Antiquities, specifically in their collection of historical toys and dolls. The museum curator, Dr. Vivian Mercer, was hesitant when I first approached her. Alina was an excellent volunteer, she said, her voice soft as we walked through the climate-controlled storage rooms, detail-oriented, respectful of the artifacts. We stopped before a glass display containing dolls from the Victorian era, their painted smiles unchanged after more than a century. Did she ever mention feeling uncomfortable, perhaps receiving similar dolls at home? I asked, watching Dr. Mercer's reflection in the glass. There was a momentary hesitation before she spoke. Not exactly, but there was an incident about 2 weeks before she stopped coming in. Dr. Mercer's voice dropped even lower. We have a special collection, not on public display, dolls with difficult histories, objects people have attributed strange occurrences to over the years. My skin prickled slightly as she continued. Alina was cataloging them. She found one that wasn't in our records, a porcelain doll with unusually lifelike features. According to the label inside the storage box, it belonged to a young girl in 1887 who claimed the doll would move at night, inch by inch, closer to her bed. What happened to the girl? I asked, already suspecting the answer. She disappeared. The only thing left behind was the doll sitting on her pillow. The museum's records showed that the doll in question was indeed missing from its designated storage location. No signs of theft, no alarms triggered. It had simply vanished from its archival box around the same time Alina began finding identical dolls on her porch. I spent weeks interviewing everyone connected to Alina, her colleagues at school, her few friends from book club, her sister and distant relatives. No one knew of anyone who would want to harm her or who would play such an elaborate, disturbing prank. The dolls yielded nothing under forensic analysis. No DNA except trace amounts from Alina herself. No fingerprints, no distinctive manufacturing marks that could be traced to a purchaser. 3 months into the investigation, we received a call from a real estate agent who had been hired to sell a property in the rural outskirts of town. The previous owner, an elderly man named Joseph Hargrove, had passed away with no heirs. The agent had found something disturbing in the attic: dozens of antique dolls arranged in concentric circles, and photographs, decades of photographs of women, many of whom had been reported missing over the years. Among them was a photo of Alina standing on her porch, unaware she was being watched, and behind her, just visible through her living room window, was the silhouette of a doll sitting on a chair. Joseph Hargrove had worked as a janitor at the Millfield Museum for over 40 years before retiring. His personnel file contained nothing notable: a quiet employee who kept to himself, always punctual, never causing problems. The kind of person who blends into the background, who becomes part of the building's fixtures. His house told a different story. The attic was a shrine to his obsession: dolls and the women who resembled them. Journal entries detailed how he would save women who reminded him of his collection, believing he was reuniting them with their porcelain counterparts. We found evidence linking him to 3 disappearances over the years, but of Alina Campbell there was no trace, no body in the house, no evidence of her final moments, just the photograph and the dolls watching silently from their perches. Joseph Hargrove's death had been ruled natural heart failure in his sleep. He had taken whatever happened to Alina to his grave. The case grew cold. Alina joined the list of unfound missing persons, her file periodically reviewed but gradually gathering dust. I visit the evidence locker sometimes, late at night when the building is quiet. I sit across from those 7 dolls, still arranged in their semicircle, their glassy eyes reflecting the dim light. They hold their secrets close, these silent witnesses to whatever transpired in Alina's final hours. And sometimes, though I know it must be my imagination, I could swear that they've moved slightly between visits. Inch by inch, their positions shifting toward the edge of the shelf, as if they're trying to follow someone only they can see. The Campbell case remains open, Alina's disappearance unresolved, but on nights when the autumn air feels like chilled silk against my skin, I find myself checking my own porch before entering my home, half expecting to find a porcelain face with glassy eyes looking up at me, waiting to be invited in. Story 9. I've been an investigator at Clearwater Police Department for 17 years now. You get used to certain patterns in this line of work, the way evidence tells a story, how witnesses contradict themselves, the familiar rhythms of truth and deception. But sometimes a case comes along that defies every pattern you've ever known. The Meridian Hotel case was one of those. It began on a Tuesday evening in late November. The air outside had that particular chill that seeps through your coat and settles in your bones. I remember the sound of my shoes against the marble floor of the hotel lobby, a gentle tap 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 that echoed slightly in the cavernous space. The manager, Davis, met me with anxious eyes and fidgeting hands. He spoke in hushed tones, as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Detective Mercer, thank you for coming personally," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're trying to keep this quiet. The last thing we need is panic spreading among our guests." The Meridian was one of those grand old hotels that had seen better days but still maintained an air of faded elegance. Brass fixtures dulled with age, carpets slightly worn in the center from decades of footsteps, crystal chandeliers that caught the light just so, creating constellations on the ceiling above. "Tell me again what happened," I said, opening my notebook. The paper was crisp under my fingers, the spine of the notebook cracking slightly as I turned to a fresh page. Davis led me toward the elevator, pressing the button for the 7th floor. We've been renovating the hotel for years now, section by section. The blueprints for this place go back to 1914, and I've studied every iteration. Every room, every closet, every maintenance shaft is accounted for. The elevator hummed as it carried us upward, the cables making a soft whirring sound that filled the small space. Last night a guest, Mr. Thornton, called the front desk at 2:17 a.m. He was agitated, said he couldn't sleep, and went for a walk down the corridor. At the far end, past room 746, he found a door, room 748. I frowned, making a note, and that's unusual because room 748 doesn't exist, detective. There's room 746, then a utility closet, then the emergency stairs. There is no room 748. There never has been. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, revealing a long corridor carpeted in deep burgundy. The wallpaper was cream-colored with a subtle pattern of intertwined vines. Wall sconces cast pools of warm light every few feet, creating alternating patches of light and shadow down the hallway. Mr. Thornton insists he entered the room, Davis continued as we walked. Says it was unlocked, a fully furnished suite with a bed made up, toiletries in the bathroom, clothes in the closet. Someone else's room, perhaps, a mix-up in the numbering. Davis shook his head. That's just it. No one was checked into that room because that room doesn't exist on our registry. And Mr. Thornton says there were photographs, dozens of them arranged on the dresser and nightstand. Photographs of what? Of people, guests, he thought, but here's where it gets strange. He recognized one of them as Eleanor Kempton. The name settled in the air between us. I stopped walking, my pen hovering above the paper. The woman who disappeared here 3 years ago. Davis nodded, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed hard. We reached the end of the corridor. Room 746 on the left, a narrow door marked utility just beyond it, and then the illuminated exit sign above the stairwell door. No room 748. Mr. Thornton was quite specific about the location, Davis said, gesturing to the wall between the utility closet and the stairs. He says the door was right here. I ran my hand over the wallpaper. It felt cool and slightly textured beneath my fingers, completely solid. No seams indicating a hidden door, no unusual gaps or spaces. Could I speak with Mr. Thornton? That's another problem. He checked out early this morning, left in quite a hurry according to the front desk staff, didn't even wait for his receipt. I made another note, the scratching of my pen suddenly loud in the quiet corridor. Security footage. That's why I called you instead of dismissing this as a confused guest. The cameras covering this section of the 7th floor went offline from 2:10 a.m. until 2:35 a.m. last night. Just those 25 minutes. Our security team can't explain it. A chill that had nothing to do with the building's air conditioning ran down my spine. I'd investigated the Eleanor Kempton disappearance 3 years ago, 28 years old, in town for a pharmaceutical conference. Last seen entering the elevator to return to her room after dinner. Never seen again. No evidence of foul play, no signs of her leaving the hotel. She simply vanished. I'd like to see the utility closet, I said, keeping my voice level. Davis produced a key card and swiped it through the reader on the utility door. It clicked open with a soft electronic beep. Inside was exactly what you'd expect: shelves stacked with linens, a vacuum cleaner, cleaning supplies. The smell of bleach and fabric softener hung in the air. A single bare bulb illuminated the space from above, creating harsh shadows. "Mind if I gestured to the back wall. "Be my guest," Davis said, stepping aside. I moved carefully between the shelves, reaching the back wall. It was finished with the same wallpaper as the corridor. I pressed against it firmly. Solid, I knocked lightly, listening to the sound. Hollow, but no more so than any standard drywall. "Has this closet always been here?" I asked, turning back to Davis. "Since the 1950s renovation, yes. Before that, this entire section was configured differently." I spent the next hour examining every inch of the 7th floor corridor. I interviewed the housekeeper assigned to this section, the maintenance supervisor, and 2 guests staying in nearby rooms. None had noticed anything unusual the previous night. No strange sounds, no unexplained doors. Before leaving, I stood once more in the spot where room 748 supposedly existed. The wall remained stubbornly solid, yet something about the space felt wrong, a subtle discrepancy I couldn't quite identify. Back at the station, I pulled the Alina Kempton file from archives. The cardboard box was dusty, the folder inside filled with reports, statements, photographs that led nowhere. 3 years of dead ends. I spread the crime scene photos across my desk, Alina's room exactly as she'd left it. Suitcase open on the luggage rack, reading glasses on the nightstand, phone charging by the bed, a half-drunk glass of water with lipstick marks on the rim. No signs of struggle, no evidence of an intruder. And then I saw it in the background of one photo, a small detail I'd overlooked before, a photograph in a simple silver frame on Alina's dresser. I grabbed my magnifying glass, leaning close to examine it. The photo showed Alina standing in front of the Meridian Hotel, but she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a man I didn't recognize, tall, distinguished-looking, his arm around Alina's shoulders. They were both smiling at the camera, looking for all the world like any happy couple. According to every statement, every piece of evidence we'd gathered, Alina Kempton had come to the conference alone. No companion, no spouse, no friend traveling with her. So who was this man? I called the forensics department, requesting enhanced scans of all photographs from the Kempton case. Then I tracked down contact information for James Thornton, the guest who discovered the mysterious room. His cell phone went straight to voicemail. His listed address was in Savannah, Georgia, a 5-hour drive from here. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of that photograph kept appearing in my mind. Alina Kempton and her unknown companion. A room that existed for 25 minutes and then disappeared. A feeling of something overlooked, something just beyond my understanding. At 3:14 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I dressed quickly and drove through the empty streets back to the Meridian Hotel. The night manager recognized me, greeting me with surprise as I requested access to the 7th floor. "Just need to check something," I explained vaguely, showing my badge. The 7th floor corridor was dimly lit at this hour, the burgundy carpet absorbing what little light there was. I walked slowly toward the end, past room 746, approaching the utility closet and stairwell. When stopped. Between the utility closet and the stairwell door was another door, room 748, plain as day, with a brass number plate gleaming softly in the low light. My heart thundered in my chest. I reached for my service weapon instinctively, then paused. Instead, I withdrew my phone and took several photographs, documenting the door's existence. Then I tried the handle. It turned smoothly under my hand. The door opened into darkness. I reached for the light switch just inside the door, and soft lamplight flooded the room. A hotel suite, immaculately maintained, king-sized bed with crisp white linens, sitting area with 2 armchairs, desk by the window with the curtains drawn. And photographs, dozens of them, arranged across every flat surface. I moved closer, examining them one by one. Photographs of people I'd never seen before. Men and women of different ages, different eras, judging by their clothing and the quality of the images. All standing in front of or inside the Meridian Hotel. All smiling, all looking directly at the camera. And there, in the center of the dresser, was a photograph of Alina Kempton with the same unknown man I'd seen in the image from her room. Next to it in a matching frame was a photograph I recognized instantly. James Thornton, the guest who discovered this room the previous night, standing in the hotel lobby, smiling at the camera. The timestamp in the corner of the photograph was dated tomorrow. I backed away slowly, a cold sweat breaking out across my skin. As I reached the doorway, I noticed one final photograph on the wall beside the door. A picture of me standing in this very room, looking at the photographs. It was time-stamped for right now. The door closed behind me with a soft click as I stepped back into the corridor. I turned, heart racing, to find myself facing the solid wall between the utility closet and the stairwell door. No room 748, no door, no evidence it had ever existed. Except for the photographs on my phone, which showed nothing but an empty wall. The Alina Kempton case remains unsolved. James Thornton was found 3 days later in his Savannah home, with no memory of ever staying at the Meridian Hotel. The manager, Davis, insists the blueprints show no room 748 has ever existed. Sometimes I stand in that corridor, my hand against the wall, wondering what's on the other side. Wondering about the room that shouldn't exist and the people in those photographs, people who checked in, but like Alina Kempton, perhaps never checked out. I've requested a transfer to another department 3 times now. Each request has been denied. Last week, I received an email confirmation for a room reservation at the Meridian Hotel, room 748. I never made that reservation. The check-in date is tomorrow. Story 10, The Enigmatic Victorian. She crossed the threshold, a veil of dust dancing in the stagnant air of the abandoned Victorian. Time seemed frozen within its peeling walls, furniture cloaked in ghostly sheets. Each step felt like treading through a forgotten memory, a frozen moment suspended in eternity. Yet amidst this eerie stillness, a mysterious anomaly lingered the doors. Every door she opened led back to the same parlor, trapping her in a perplexing loop of corridors and rooms, a labyrinth of familiarity. No matter which handle she turned, no matter which path she followed, the destination remained unchanged: the parlor with its antique chair and a haunting sense of anticipation. The only escape was the entrance she had come through, but when she turned to retrace her steps, the front door had vanished, leaving her stranded in this enigmatic maze of rooms and corridors. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form transformed the once abandoned Victorian into a chilling crime scene. Detective Sarah Lind stood at the threshold, observing as forensic technicians moved silently through the dim interior like specters in the night. The house had earned a reputation among locals, a place where compasses spun wildly, where whispers of unseen watchers echoed through its empty halls. Now, it held secrets far more sinister than mere superstitions. The initial examination suggests she's been deceased for approximately 3 days, the medical examiner murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The cause of death appears to be asphyxiation. Morgan had been found seated in the parlor, her peaceful expression belying the tragedy of her demise. Hands folded neatly in her lap, she seemed to await a visitor who would never come. No signs of struggle, no marks of violence, just an unsettling stillness that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. "Who discovered the body?" Lind inquired, her gaze scanning the notes before her. "A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers," her partner responded. They stumbled upon her seated there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer. The house had remained abandoned since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly 5 years prior. Legal disputes had left it neglected, unwanted, a relic of the past that only vandals and thrill-seekers dared to explore. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student with a penchant for researching architectural enigmas, had been drawn to the Victorians' mysterious allure. Friends spoke of her meticulous nature, her insatiable curiosity for spaces that defied traditional design. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days ago, Lind remarked. Morgan had mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her research. Investigations unveiled Morgan's frequent visits to the house in the weeks leading up to her untimely death. Her journal entries chronicled peculiar acoustic phenomena, chilling cold spots that defied explanation, and doors that seemed to lead to ever-shifting destinations with each opening. In her final entry, she spoke of bringing specialized equipment to capture what she cryptically referred to as spatial inconsistencies. Yet this equipment remained conspicuously absent from the scene. The autopsy unveiled an unexpected detailed traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant associated with shamanic practices. While the substance could induce disorientation and vivid hallucinations, the quantities found were insufficient to be lethal. She wasn't one to dabble in recreational substances, her boyfriend insisted during questioning. Morgan was meticulous in her research, she wouldn't have jeopardized her perceptions willingly. Digital forensics unearthed fragments of deleted messages on Morgan's phone, exchanges with an individual who shared her fascination with the enigmatic house. Their discussions grew increasingly intimate and enigmatic, hinting at a shared understanding of the house's hidden truths. "The house retains the memories of its past," one message cryptically conveyed. "It yearns for someone to comprehend." The investigation led Lind and her team to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian whose expertise in rare spatial anomalies had captivated Morgan's interest. Their professional rapport had evolved into a deep personal connection, bound by their shared quest for the truth behind the Victorians' mysteries. Reeves appeared genuinely devastated by Morgan's demise, explaining, "The house holds a legacy of optical illusions and deceptive perspectives. Its design was crafted to bewilder and mislead. Morgan believed there was a deeper significance to it, a truth beyond mere architectural tricks." However, Reeves possessed a solid alibi for the presumed time of Morgan's passing, supported by security footage of him delivering a lecture at a distant university symposium. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. Eleanor Blackwood's grandson, residing abroad, disclosed a long-held family secret. My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish within those walls, he divulged. Others met their end in that parlor, always in a serene repose. The family termed it the claiming. Provided with journals spanning generations, Lind and her team uncovered a haunting pattern of deaths attributed to natural causes, deaths shrouded in the shadows of the Victorians' enigmatic influence. A secondary sweep of the property unearthed a concealed compartment behind the parlor's fireplace. Within its confines lay Morgan's missing equipment, alongside a collection of artifacts from diverse indigenous cultures, meticulously arranged in a cryptic pattern. At the heart of this assemblage sat a weathered figurine, its features smoothed by the touch of generations. Analysis revealed the figurine depicted a deity associated with liminal spaces, thresholds between worlds. Traces of the alkaloid found in Morgan's system adorned these artifacts, hinting at a deeper connection to her demise. The investigation took a chilling turn as forensic analysis of dust patterns within the house unveiled the presence of an unknown individual during Morgan's final hours. Partial fingerprints, foreign to Morgan or any documented visitor, lingered on doorknobs throughout the eerie estate. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was discovered lifeless in his residence. Like Morgan, he sat poised at the entrance, a serene expression gracing his features, the same alkaloid staining his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that defied any lock within his abode, but seamlessly fit the hidden compartment within the Victorian. In his parting correspondence, addressed to himself as though preserving a testament, Reeves inscribed, "The house doesn't ensnare you physically. It ensnares your perception." Morgan was correct. These doors guide you in perpetual circles until a revelation sets you free. But by then, the desire to depart fades. The case lingered as a haunting enigma, labeled as suspicious deaths under ongoing scrutiny. The Victorian stood condemned, its entry barred by official decree. Yet whispers persisted of ethereal lights flickering within on certain moonlit nights, of visitors who ventured in but never emerged. Some locals whispered of a curse that befell those who delved too deeply into the house's enigmatic lore. Others speculated that Morgan and Reeves had unearthed a force ancient and potent, one that thrived within the interstices of conventional reality. The truth remained as elusive as an exit in a house where all doors led back to the beginning, a labyrinth of secrets and shadows waiting to ensnare the unwary souls seeking to unravel its mysteries. Story 11. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. Blueprints held no trace of it. Yet beneath the worn carpet a hidden door lurked. A hefty, rusted handle beckoned. It required the strength of 3 to pry it ajar. Stale air, thick with the aroma of damp soil, billowed out to meet them. Steps descended into the darkness below. They anticipated storage space. Instead, they encountered a solitary chair under a swaying light bulb. And adorning the wall behind it, a series of photographs depicting them. Images taken from within the confines of their own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban abode during the bleak winter months when the shadows lengthened early and the leafless trees loomed stark against the frigid sky. The house, with its 2 stories, weathered siding, and creaking floors, exuded character, they had convinced themselves. Character and history. But what they had not foreseen was the depth of history the dwelling housed, or how violently it would collide with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene unit already cordoning off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's tremulous voice had relayed the discovery beneath their living room floor. We must document everything before anyone else ventures down, instructed Connors, slipping on latex gloves with practiced ease. Camera flashes pierced the darkness as the forensics team captured the eerie scene. The wooden stairs groaned beneath their weight. The basement, a cramped space akin to a standard bedroom, featured concrete walls painted a drab gray. A solitary chair anchored to the floor at its center. Above, the stark bulb cast elongated shadows, revolving slowly in an unseen breeze. Yet it was the line of photographs that seized their attention, 37 snapshots meticulously arranged in a chronological array. "These date back nearly 4 weeks," remarked Connor's partner, studying the timestamps inscribed on the backs of the prints. "Look here, Mrs. Mercer dozing on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms." The absence of forced entry, broken windows, or tampered locks puzzled them. The security system had remained silent. Nothing had been pilfered. Only their privacy had been violated, along with any sense of security the family had harbored. Forensic analysis uncovered multiple fingerprints, most belonging to previous proprietors of the home. Ownership had changed hands 6 times in the past decade, each family departing within a year and selling at diminished prices. None had mentioned a basement. "We must interview every former owner," Connors ordered, flipping through her notepad. The case darkened as they delved into the property's history. Discrepancies marred the records, blueprints altered between transactions, permits filed and retracted, inspection reports redacted unaccountably. A breakthrough emerged during the interrogation of the contractor who had refurbished the house 7 years prior. His visage blanched upon glimpsing the basement photos. "That chamber is non-existent," he declared, his hands quivering. "I gutted that place to its foundation. No basement, no door, nothing beneath the living room but earth and concrete." Data retrieved from a hidden memory card within the light fixture unveiled hundreds more images on their evidence boards, not only of the Mercers, but of former families. Children slumbering, parents quarreling, intimate scenes, mundane rituals, all captured by an unauthorized observer. The case veered into darker realms with the recovery of audio files from a weatherproof box nestled in the basement's corner. Recordings of conversations in the master bedroom, kitchen, living area. The sophisticated sound quality hinted at concealed microphones scattered throughout the house, though none had surfaced during the initial search. "We must dismantle every wall," Connors directed urgently. "Inspect the air vents, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has been surveilling these families for years." Beyond the photograph-laden wall, investigators stumbled upon a narrow passageway leading to a modest monitoring station. A desk, a chair, a laptop linked to a network of wireless cameras, and a journal brimming with meticulous musings on each family that had inhabited the residence, their routines, their schedules, their disputes, their vulnerabilities. The penmanship aligned with samples from the house's original constructor, a man named Edward Kelvin. Reports indicated his demise during the house's construction, a fact that grew increasingly dubious as the inquiry unfolded. No death certificate, no funeral arrangements. Edward Kelvin had vanished from official records. The journal's final entries spiraled into disarray. Phrases like "they never looked down" and "they never see me" recurred. The concluding page bore a solitary sentence: "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint comparisons validated what investigators had suspected. Edward Kelvin had never departed the house he had erected. He had retreated into its concealed recesses, erecting a labyrinth of vantage points to observe the families who deemed themselves solitary occupants. The pursuit lasted 3 days. They unearthed him curled within a crawlspace amid the second-story bedrooms, his physique sinewy and agile, acclimated to navigating the narrow passages he had crafted within the walls. His eyes blinked against the flashlight beams, unaccustomed to direct illumination. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as if they were mere players in his private drama. He recounted observing them with the detached precision of a researcher studying subjects. He had never laid a hand on them, never purloined from them, never intruded directly into their lives. He had merely watched, recorded, documented. "They welcomed me," he informed the interrogators, his tone soft and rational. "They signed the deeds, they became mine." A mental assessment concluded Kelvin suffered from severe delusions, viewing himself not as an interloper but as a guardian of the house. The families were transient guests in what he perceived as his eternal domain. The Mercer family forsook the property, joining the ranks of their predecessors who deserted their possessions, bearing only the essentials in suitcases. The house stood vacant as legal proceedings unfolded. The trial unveiled the full scale of Kelvin's surveillance matrix, concealed chambers accessible solely through crawl spaces, observation points integrated into the structure itself, meticulously planned prior to the laying of the first brick. The house had been devised as an observatory from its inception, its inhabitants unwitting participants in Kelvin's obsessive documentation. Upon the jury's pronouncement, Kelvin exhibited no response. He had already vanished into the recesses of his mind's architecture, where he could still traverse unseen through the passages of the house that now existed solely in memory. The property was razed, its foundation excavated and filled. Yet for the families that had dwelled there, the violation endured. They remained haunted not by what had been taken from them, but by what had lurked unseen, watching, listening, recording their most intimate moments from within walls they had trusted to safeguard them. At times, in hushed moments, they found themselves glancing upward at air vents, light fixtures, the junctures where walls met ceilings, pondering whether they were truly solitary now, pondering if they ever had been. Story 12, the apartment had sat silent and vacant for many moons before the new tenants crossed its threshold. Their expectations were low, perhaps just some settled dust, forgotten relics of the past. Yet one door stubbornly refused to yield, a closet locked tight from within. When the landlord finally broke the seal, they braced for musty coats or discarded odds and ends. What they discovered sent a shiver down their spines. The walls bore witness to a frantic struggle, etched with deep, jagged lines of despair. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone, its once vibrant battery now extinguished save for a single unread message glowing on its screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the grim tapestry of crime scenes, felt a chill creep up her spine at the sight before her. Not a drop of blood in sight, no overt violence, yet those marks told a tale of confinement, of a battle for freedom. Summon forensics at once, she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, already capturing the haunting etchings through his lens, and procure the records of the previous tenants. The message on the phone was stark in its simplicity. "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with clammy hands, divulged that the former tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving unpaid rent in their wake. A young woman kept to herself, disappeared about 6 months back, he mumbled, avoiding the closet's gaze. No trouble stirred. Forensic analysis unveiled a tapestry of DNA within the scratched walls, most belonging to a single individual, presumably the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, aged 28, reported as gone by her workplace when she ceased attendance. However, 2 distinct DNA profiles emerged. One remained a mystery to the system, while the other matched that of a man supposedly deceased for 2 years. "This defies reason," Shaw muttered as she pored over the lab findings. Derek Mercer, a convicted assailant presumed deceased in a vehicular mishap, bore fresh genetic traces within the closet's confines. Emma's abode whispered of an existence interrupted, mail gathering dust, a lone coffee mug abandoned in the sink, a meticulously arranged bed. Phone records wove a narrative of regular calls to her sister, abruptly severed, and a flurry of incoming calls from an unfamiliar number leading up to her disappearance. Emma hinted at a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed disclosed. No name given, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured Emma's return one fateful evening, trailed shortly thereafter by a figure cloaked in anonymity, his features shielded by a cap. The puzzle pieces began to align when fingerprints matching Derek Mercer were unveiled on the closet's inner doorknob. He staged his demise, Shaw surmised, but for what purpose and what binds him to Emma? The enigmatic DNA match led them to another vanished soul, Lynette Porter, absent for 3 long years. Though her trail had grown cold, eyewitnesses recalled a figure resembling her visiting Emma's dwelling on multiple occasions. Shaw connected the dots while scrutinizing traffic camera archives. A vehicle linked to Derek Mercer's kin loitered near Emma's residence, bearing a driver matching Derek's stature and build. The inquiry navigated towards a secluded estate owned by Mercer's kin. Concealed behind formidable cellar doors, they unearthed Lynette Porter, frail and famished, ensnared in a hell reminiscent of Emma's captivity. "He made me witness," she murmured, eyes vacant, "said I needed to comprehend the fate of those who seek escape." Evidence mounted, journals chronicling Mercer's fixation on dominance, photographs of women mirroring Emma and Lynette's visages, and most damningly, footage of Mercer coercing Emma into her dungeon. "She thought to expose me," his voice echoed in the recording. "About us, none divulges my truths." The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned borders, while forensic profilers constructed a profile that sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. Mercer didn't merely seek to end lives, he craved the torment, the slow erosion of hope in confined spaces. Upon his capture at a transit hub, Mercer clutched a fresh identity and passage to a seaside destination. Nestled in his pack, duct tape, a hunting blade, and a news clipping chronicling Emma's vanishing. During interrogation, Mercer exuded a disquieting composure. "She penned that message herself," he asserted of the phone, a plea for salvation, yet she warranted no deliverance. The trial unmasked Mercer's intricate charade of deceiving death, utilizing dental records of a vagrant matching his semblance. For a span of 2 years, he eluded notice, preying on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's remains were never unearthed. Forensic clues hinted at her eventual demise within that closet, etching a futile plea upon unyielding walls. After a mere 4 hours of deliberation, the jury rendered a verdict of guilt on all counts. As the judge intoned a life term devoid of reprieve, Mercer's lips curved in a faint smile, as if some cryptic rationale only he grasped danced in his mind. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter addressed the court. "He imprisoned us within cramped confines, for his spirit dwells in shadowed captivity. While he withers in his cell, I shall bask in the light." The case reshaped missing persons procedures within the precinct, emphasizing relational dynamics and tenancy inquiries. Detective Shaw preserved the closet's door from Emma's residence in her office, a somber memento that the most harrowing crime scenes aren't always marred by blood, but by the marks of one struggling against the odds to endure. Story 13. The coffee shop had been his sanctuary for years, the familiar table, the usual order, the comforting silence that enveloped him like a soft blanket. The barista recognized his face, but his true identity remained a mystery to all. Then one day he simply didn't show up. Concerned, the police investigated and found a wallet left behind at his customary seat. Inside the wallet, they discovered a driver's license with a photo, yet no name, No address, just an eerie blank space where his vital information should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the perplexing case, her fingers tracing over the cold metal table as she meticulously reviewed the security footage. The enigmatic figure, now dubbed John Doe in the case files, appeared unassuming on the camera, a man of average height with unremarkable features, clad in a navy coat and toting a weathered leather messenger bag. His disappearance defied logic, for he had entered the coffee shop, taken his usual black coffee, and settled at the corner table, hidden partially by a lush plant. He wrote in a notebook, occasionally sipping his coffee and gazing out the window. Then, in a bewildering turn of events, he placed his wallet on the table, rose, and walked towards the restroom hallway, never to return. Perplexed, Mercer instructed the tech specialist to replay the footage. The mystery deepened when it became apparent that John had never entered any restroom, no trace of him leaving through any exit. It was as though he had evaporated into thin air. Back at the precinct, Mercer meticulously examined the contents of the abandoned wallet. The driver's license photo matched the elusive man, yet the personal details were conspicuously absent, replaced by haunting blank spaces. Credit cards devoid of names, only strings of numbers that led to non-existent accounts. Neatly arranged cash, a recent coffee shop receipt, and a lone business card blank on both sides, save for a faintly printed phone number. Dialing the number led Mercer to a bizarre encounter, a silent line, punctuated by the sound of rustling paper before disconnecting abruptly. The barista, who had served John for years, could offer little insight. He was a reserved man, always polite. I believe he may have had an accent, but his voice was so soft it was difficult to discern. Asked about any acquaintances or conversations, the barista shook his head. He was a solitary figure, always engrossed in his writing. The notebook left on the table proved to be a cryptic enigma, its pages filled with what appeared to be intricate codes or encrypted messages. Department cryptographers struggled to decipher its contents. Among the scribbles were sketches of architectural designs that matched no local structures. Mercer dispatched officers to canvass the area with John Doe's photos, yet no one recognized him. No missing persons report bore his description, and his fingerprints yielded no matches. It was as though he existed solely within the confines of that coffee shop. During her scrutiny of the security footage, Mercer noticed a peculiar anomaly. The timestamp flickered every morning as John entered the shop. Despite the tech specialist attributing it to a glitch, Mercer sensed a deeper significance. Returning to the coffee shop, she occupied his designated table, her gaze shifting between the entrance and the restroom corridor, separated by an antique mirror embellished with cryptic symbols akin to those in John's notebook. Questioning the shop owner, Mercer inquired about the mirror's history. "It's been here longer than I can remember. Came with the building. A cumbersome thing requires 2 men to relocate." The owner affirmed that the mirror had never been moved during his tenure. Intrigued, Mercer approached the mirror, her reflection distorted in its depths. Expecting cool glass, she was met with an unexpected warmth upon touching its surface. The forensics team dismantled the mirror, revealing a concealed compartment housing identical wallets, each with a blank driver's license mirroring John Doe's photo. Adjacent lay a leather-bound journal chronicling entries spanning decades, all inscribed in the same script as the notebook. The final entry ominously declared, "The experiment must cease. They draw near. The window is closing." Surprisingly, the fingerprints within the hidden space matched John Doe's. Carbon dating of the initial wallet suggested it dated back 50 years, yet the photo depicted an unchanged visage. Entries alluded to experiments involving temporal displacement and identity transference, mentioning crossing back and window points. One passage resonated with Mercer. The coffee shop serves as a nexus where realities converge. The mirror serves as the threshold. When alignment aligns, passage opens. As the investigation unfolded, peculiar occurrences plagued the vicinity of the coffee shop. Patrons reported seeing their reflections move autonomously in the window glass. Some even claimed to have glimpsed John Doe at his usual spot, though footage contradicted their assertions. A breakthrough emerged when an elderly woman, Margaret Keller, a former physicist involved in classified projects, reached out to the police. She identified John Doe as Daniel Weston, a brilliant physicist who vanished during an experiment involving quantum mirror surfaces theorized to facilitate interreality transference. Keller provided evidence of Weston's presumed demise in a lab accident, aligning with the earliest entry in the journal found behind the mirror. Weston's belief in parallel realities and the existence of weak points between them resonated with Keller's revelations. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer unearthed its historical connection to the research facility where Weston conducted his experiments, the very site on which the shop was erected. The case climaxed when Mercer, engrossed in reviewing security footage late one night, discerned a hidden detail previously overlooked. Reflected in the mirror, she observed John Doe Daniel Weston watching himself at the table, two manifestations of the same man coexisting simultaneously. Rushing to the coffee shop, Mercer was met with a shattered mirror, a final note amidst the shards scribed in the familiar hand. The experiment concludes. The window seals shut. Do not pursue. The enigma of the enigmatic man lingers unresolved. The coffee shop shuttered following the inquiry. The structure eventually razed. Daniel Weston's whereabouts remain unknown, his journals vanishing mysteriously from evidence custody. Mercer resigned from the force not long after, her neighbors occasionally spotting her on the porch, engrossed in a notebook resembling Weston's. A fragment of an antique mirror adorns her wall, its surface occasionally rippling unnoticed. Story 14. The motel stood as a relic of forgotten times, its faded facade hinting at stories untold. Guests passed through its doors briefly, seeking only a night's rest before moving on. The clerk's weary eyes met hers as he handed over the key, a silent warning lingering in the air. "Just don't take the last door on the left," he whispered, a shiver running down her spine. In the hushed stillness of night, she found herself drawn to that forbidden door. The hallway was bathed in a dim, eerie light, casting shadows that danced with unseen whispers. Her hand trembled as she touched the icy handle, the wood beneath her fingertips holding untold mysteries. The door itself appeared no different from the others, a silent sentinel guarding its secrets until she pressed her ear against its surface. A faint sound, barely perceptible, echoed from the other side. A soft breath, a whisper of existence in the quietude of the night, sending a chill down her spine. Detective Morgan Reed's world was one of shadows and secrets, of unraveling mysteries woven in blood and silence. As she stepped under the yellow crime scene tape, the air grew heavy with the scent of metal and fear, a familiar symphony of dread playing in her mind. The room before her was a canvas of contradictions, a pristine bathroom juxtaposed with the darkened carpet, stained with the crimson hue of tragedy. And there, in the center of it all, lay a young woman, her life extinguished in a moment of horror. Her vacant gaze met Reed's, a silent plea frozen in time. Amidst the chaos of the crime scene, Reed knelt beside the victim, her fingers tracing the outline of a life abruptly ended. The forensic technician's voice cut through the silence, clinical and detached, detailing the grim reality of another life lost to darkness. 3 women, 3 lives intertwined by the cruel hand of fate, their stories woven into a tapestry of loss and grief. Reed knew the pattern, the signature left behind by a predator lurking in the shadows, preying on the vulnerable. The investigation unfolded like a dark symphony, each note a clue leading closer to the heart of the mystery. Surveillance footage yielded no answers, alibis crumbled under scrutiny, and the truth remained elusive, dancing just beyond reach. It was in the quiet moments, the whispers of the victim's past, that Reed found a thread to pull. A name, a fleeting memory, a man known only as C, a shadow in the tapestry of the victim's life. As Reed delved deeper, the facade of normalcy crumbled, revealing the darkness that lurked beneath. Charles Emerson, a man of stature and influence, stood at the center of the web, his lies unraveling with each passing moment. The truth emerged in fragments, a web of deceit spun by a man driven by fear and desperation. Emerson's carefully constructed world came crashing down, his mask slipping to reveal the emptiness within. In the cold confines of the courtroom, justice prevailed, casting a shadow over Emerson's once untouchable facade. But for Reed, the echoes of the case lingered, a reminder that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. As she walked down hotel hallways, the memory of that fateful door haunted her, a specter of the past refusing to fade. And in the evidence locker, 3 keys lay dormant, silent witnesses to a tale of darkness and despair. Story 15. In the realm of the unknown, where whispers linger in the shadows and mysteries dance in the moonlight, there was a tale that defied logic and chilled the bones of those who dared to uncover its secrets. It began with a simple pocket dial, a mere echo of static and muffled sounds that beckoned to be heard. The operator hesitated, ready to dismiss the call as a mere glitch in the vast expanse of technology, until a voice pierced through the void. A woman's voice, trembling with urgency, whispered into the darkness, "He's here." And then silence engulfed the air like a shroud. The number traced back to an abandoned house, a relic frozen in time, untouched by the hands of the living for years. No signs of intrusion, no disturbances to disturb the eerie stillness that clung to the walls. But in the heart of that desolate dwelling, amidst the layers of dust and forgotten memories, there sat a phone on the kitchen counter, its screen aglow with an otherworldly light. Detective Morgan Reed found herself drawn to the device, pressing the playback button repeatedly, each time haunted by the ghostly whisper that echoed through the empty room's desperation, fear, and a sense of the impossible intertwined in those fleeting moments. The house had once belonged to the Sullivan family, their presence now a mere echo in the wind. A tragic fire had forced them to flee, leaving behind a legacy of sorrow and unanswered questions. The caretaker swore by the solitude of the place, adamant that no living soul had crossed its threshold in years. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired, her voice a whisper in the dimly lit room. Her partner, Detective Walsh, revealed that the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the daughter who had met a tragic end in a car accident 3 years prior. The pieces of the puzzle refused to fit, a dead woman's phone calling out from the void of abandonment. The forensic team scoured the house, seeking answers in the whispers of the past. Dust particles danced in the faint light, revealing nothing but the enigma that surrounded them. No fingerprints to trace, no footprints to follow, the mystery deepened with each passing moment. The recording of the call became a beacon of hope in the sea of uncertainty, a mere 11 seconds of static, of breath, of those 5 haunting words that echoed through the halls of time. Voice analysis confirmed the impossible. Catherine's voice, reaching out from beyond the veil with 98% certainty, her presence a spectral whisper in the night. Morgan and Walsh delved into Catherine's past, seeking solace in the memories of those who had known her. Her father, her mother, her boyfriend each held a piece of the puzzle, each a thread in the tapestry of lies and deceit that shrouded her untimely demise. And then a breakthrough. Catherine's mother, trembling with fear and resolve, presented a journal found among her daughter's belongings. The pages spoke of love turned sour, of shadows lurking in the corners of a once beautiful relationship. The final entry, a chilling prophecy of doom, sent shivers down Morgan's spine. Confronted with the truth laid bare in ink, Catherine's boyfriend, Mark Jennings, faltered under the weight of suspicion. His alibi crumbled, his facade of innocence shattered by the revelations hidden within the journal's pages. The past, once buried, rose to confront him with its accusing gaze. As the investigation unfolded, the truth emerged from the depths of deceit: a buried phone, a trail of deleted texts, and the harrowing realization that Catherine's death was no mere accident. Mark's sinister game of manipulation and control had claimed more than one victim, his web of lies unraveling in the face of justice. The phone from the abandoned house, a relic of a twisted mind, now lay silent in the evidence locker, a phantom of the past, a reminder of the darkness that lurks in the hearts of men. And yet, in the stillness of the night, some claim to hear its phantom ring a spectral echo of a voice long silenced, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable horrors. Catherine's story lives on, a whispered tale of courage and redemption, a testament to the power of truth in a world shrouded in shadows. In the end, justice prevailed not through supernatural means, but through the unwavering voice of a woman who refused to be forgotten, a beacon of light in the darkness, guiding the lost souls home. Story 16. The ancient box lay buried beneath layers of forgotten trinkets and dust in the attic, a relic of the past owners of the house. Within its confines, faded Polaroids whispered tales of birthdays and family gatherings, innocent and ordinary. Yet as her fingers delicately brushed the last photograph, a shiver danced down Rebecca's spine. In the image, captured in her very living room, sat a family unknown to her, with a man lurking in the shadows of the hallway behind them watching. Descending the creaking wooden steps, Rebecca sensed the weight of the house pressing in on her, suffocating her newfound solitude. Placing the photograph on her kitchen counter, she scrutinized it under the harsh glow of the fluorescent light. The uncanny resemblance between her home and the strangers in the picture was undeniable, sending tendrils of unease coiling around her heart. The arrival of Detective Morgan, clad in a worn leather jacket that whispered of untold mysteries, marked the beginning of a quiet investigation. As he studied the photograph with a keen eye, Rebecca revealed her scant knowledge of the previous owners, the Nelsons, who had sold her the house and vanished without a trace. The detective delved into the past, unraveling a web of former occupants, each family residing in the house for exactly 1 year before disappearing into oblivion. The Sutherlands, the missing link, had left no trace behind, as if they had ceased to exist, leaving behind only eerie Polaroids frozen in time. Forensic analysis unveiled chilling details about the figure in the hallway, the mysterious watcher. Tall, cloaked in darkness, his presence lingered in the shadows, a silent observer of the families who came and went without a trace. An unsettling pattern emerged, linking the disappearances to the enigmatic architect, Samuel Whitfield, who had vanished after completing the house. Beneath the house's concrete floor, a macabre discovery awaited: a burial ground of the missing families, perfectly preserved in the earth's embrace. Among their belongings lay the camera that had captured their final moments, along with a journal detailing Whitfield's sinister observations. As Rebecca sought refuge in a hotel under police protection, a chilling phone call shattered the night, the mechanical whir of a Polaroid camera echoing in the darkness. The enigma of Samuel Whitfield remained unsolved, his presence looming over the empty house like a ghostly specter. The investigation lingers, shrouded in shadows and unanswered questions, as the house stands silent, its secrets buried deep within its walls. Whispers of Whitfield's fate, death, or disappearance haunt those who dare to delve into the mystery, for in the darkness, new families are being watched by unseen eyes, waiting to capture their every move. The truth remains elusive, a phantom that eludes grasp, as the legacy of the man in the photograph lives on, casting a long shadow over those who seek to unravel his dark secrets. Story 17. Renovations always lead to uncovering hidden treasures within the walls of time, old relics, forgotten memories, and secrets long kept. Sarah and Michael, drawn to the intricate details and storied past of a Victorian-era home, embarked on a journey that would unravel more than just the physical structure. Beneath the floorboards, nestled among the shadows, lay a letter, a silent messenger from the past, warning of shadows lurking in the present. The paper, fragile and worn, bore the cryptic message, "Don't trust the one who knocked." As the echo of 3 sharp raps reverberated through the empty house, a shiver raced down their spines, awakening a dormant unease. Detective Alina Reid, with weathered hands that bore witness to countless mysteries, delicately retrieved the note, its secrets seeping through the faded ink. The couple's encounter had already tainted the evidence, leaving a lingering sense of foreboding in the air. Background checks painted a picture of normalcy for Sarah and Michael, newlyweds, solid footing in life. But the house harbored a tapestry of stories woven with threads of the past. The Hargrove family, previous owners of the dwelling, had left behind a legacy shrouded in whispers and unanswered questions. Margaret Hargrove, the last matriarch of the family, had departed this world under mundane circumstances, or so it seemed. Yet as Detective Reid delved deeper into the shadows of the past, a tale of debts unpaid and secrets buried emerged. Franklin Hargrove, once a respected figure in the community, had succumbed to the pressures of gambling debts and the menacing presence of a figure known only as the Collector. 3 knocks, a haunting rhythm that spelled out a grim fate for those who dared to cross him. Margaret's sister, a frail remnant of the past, whispered of fear that clung to the walls like a specter. The Collector's visits, a harbinger of doom, had driven Franklin to a desperate act, one that sealed their fates in a macabre dance of deceit and tragedy. The workshop, once a haven of creativity, became a stage for a grim tableau of violence and betrayal. The excavation of the house's dark secrets unearthed more than bones of the past. It revealed a tale of anguish and sacrifice, of love twisted by fear and desperation. Margaret's diaries, hidden away in the attic, bore witness to her silent suffering, the weight of the truth pressing down on her fragile shoulders. With the pieces of the puzzle falling into place, justice, though belated, found its mark. Victor Mercer, the enigmatic Collector, returned from the shadows of oblivion to claim his rightful place in the annals of history. The house, now tainted by the echoes of the past, stood as a testament to the fragility of trust and the enduring power of secrets. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark legacy, bid farewell to its haunted halls, leaving behind whispers of a past best left undisturbed. The note, a silent sentinel of warning, remained in the custody of the law, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the veneer of respectability. In the stillness of the night, whispers of 3 knocks drifted through the empty rooms, a ghostly echo of a past that refused to be forgotten. Detective Reid, in her final report, mused on the enigmatic nature of human frailty and the shadows that lurk within us all. Some mysteries, she concluded, are destined to remain unsolved, their secrets buried deep within the recesses of the human heart. Story 18: The Secrets of the Dollhouse. She always avoided the attic, but when the storm brought a leak in the roof, she had no choice but to venture up there. The attic was a place of forgotten treasures, cloaked in dust and tangled cobwebs. Amidst the shadows, tucked away in the far corner, rested an ancient dollhouse. Its intricate details sent shivers down her spine, the tiny furniture arranged with meticulous care. However, as she peered inside, a knot twisted in her stomach. The figures within were not dolls, they were miniature replicas, painstakingly carved by hand, of her own family. Each tiny figure was placed exactly where they sat downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to be her was standing by the attic door. Rebecca Morgan hesitantly traced her finger along the dollhouse roof, feeling the indent where the wooden figure stood. A chill raced through her body, separate from the draft whispering through the attic. The dollhouse had no place in her life. This was not her childhood home, but a rental property the family had recently moved into. The unsettling discovery prompted Rebecca to contact law enforcement in a panic. Officers arrived at the suburban home to find a family in distress, refusing to return to the upper floor. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially dismissed their fears as a prank or the result of an unfamiliar environment. What struck Detective Harmon most was the precision of the miniature figures. Each one captured a distinct feature of the family members: the father's receding hairline, the teenage son's hoodie, even the small birthmark on the mother's hand. The mystery deepened when forensic teams uncovered fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. More disturbing were the tiny cameras hidden in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a sophisticated recording system beneath the dollhouse. Analysis of the Morgan family's activities revealed an eerie pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse mirrored not just their current locations, but exact moments from different days, indicating someone had been observing them for an extended period, learning their routines. It was more than mere stalking, Detective Harmon reflected. The level of obsession displayed was beyond anything I'd encountered before. The investigation took a turn when a concealed basement entrance was found behind a pantry wall. Inside, investigators uncovered evidence of someone living there before the Morgans moved in. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted at an intruder residing beneath the family for weeks. The absence of forced entry puzzled authorities, as the property had been empty for almost a year before the Morgans arrived. Further inquiry revealed a digital trail leading to a small apartment across town. Inside, walls were plastered with photographs of the Morgan family and previous occupants, along with detailed journals documenting their daily routines. Most chilling were the dozens of unfinished dollhouses, each representing a different home in the area. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, son of the previous homeowners. Financial records indicated mounting debt after his parents' deaths. Instead of selling the property, he had covertly inhabited it, monitoring tenants while collecting rent. The dollhouse was his domain, remarked the forensic psychologist involved in the case. Each figure symbolized someone under his surveillance. Rebecca's figure by the attic door wasn't a threat, it was his acknowledgement of her discovery. During questioning, Wells remained disturbingly composed, revealing his compulsion to control the property and its inhabitants. They lived in my childhood home, slept in my parents' room. I needed to ensure they respected it, he declared. When pressed about the miniature figures, he coldly stated, I wanted them to know I was always watching. Psychological evaluations unveiled a complex delusion of possession. Unable to accept losing his home, Wells fixated on maintaining authority through an elaborate surveillance system. The dollhouse became his tool to dominate both the property and its occupants. The Morgan family chose never to return to the house. Rebecca confessed that the most haunting moment was not finding the dollhouse, but realizing its implications. We were under scrutiny, our lives measured and manipulated, she lamented. The horror lay not in the dollhouse itself, but in knowing we were mere pawns in his twisted game. Wells faced charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and breaking and entering. The case prompted a review of real estate laws regarding disclosure of property histories and agents' responsibility to ensure homes are vacated properly. During the sentencing, the judge emphasized the profound violation suffered by the Morgan family. You didn't just invade their home, you shattered their sense of security and autonomy, turning their privacy into your spectacle. Criminologists found the case unnerving for the length of time Wells had operated unnoticed. His journals revealed a pattern of secretly residing in homes for years, constructing dollhouses for each family he observed. The Morgans relocated far away, but Rebecca admitted to habitual checks of closets and hidden spaces. She removed all miniature figures from their new residence, haunted by the thought of unseen eyes tracking her movements. Some days I still sense a presence, a lingering gaze, she confided. I wonder if somewhere, someone is orchestrating my life in a dollhouse I've yet to uncover. Story 19. She yearned to refresh the nursery before the new bundle of joy's arrival. The walls wore a faint blue, holding within them tales of days gone by. As she applied the initial coat of white paint, something unexpected surfaced, the faint outline of letters gradually becoming more distinct, a message etched below the surface. Don't let it hear you, her breath hitched. Stepping back, she noticed them tiny handprints in the fresh paint, too high up for any child to reach. This revelation in the nursery of the Morgan household marked the inception of what later came to be known as the Whispering House Enigma. The young couple had bought the Victorian-style abode only months prior at a remarkably low price. The real estate agent had only mentioned minor aesthetic concerns, omitting any mention of the property's shadowy past. Detective Sarah Klein rang the doorbell, her notebook at the ready. A woman answered, her pregnant belly prominent beneath paint-smeared overalls. Dark circles encircled her eyes. Sleep had eluded her for days. The detective observed the woman's trembling hands as she recounted stumbling upon the message and handprints. The previous owners vanished suddenly, the woman explained. The neighbors claimed they left in the dead of night. No moving truck, just essentials packed into their car. As Detective Klein traversed the historic residence, her footsteps echoed on the time-worn floorboards. Standing in the nursery, she scrutinized the half-painted wall. The message still lingered where the painting had been abruptly halted. Beside it, 5 small handprints imprinted in the wet paint, positioned at a height unreachable for a child. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property records. The house had changed hands 8 times in 30 years, a remarkably high turnover rate. Each family had stayed for less than 2 years. More unsettling were the child welfare reports filed for 3 of those families. Children spoke of whispers from the walls and someone watching them as they slept. The detective delved further, scouring construction records and historical archives. The house had once belonged to a leaner Blackwood, a wealthy widow with no heirs who had run a small orphanage from the premises during the early industrial era. News clippings mentioned 5 children who had vanished from her care. Authorities at the time suspected they had fled, a common occurrence for orphans of that era. When Alina passed away, workers renovating the house stumbled upon a sealed chamber behind the nursery wall. Inside, they uncovered children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and clothing, but no remains. The case went cold, buried in dusty records. Detective Klein interviewed former residents, piecing together a disturbing narrative. Each family with children recounted strange happenings, toys rearranged overnight, childish laughter resonating through empty corridors, and crayon drawings materializing on walls. Most dismissed these occurrences as flights of fancy until the writing materialized. The message varied slightly in each account. Don't let them find you. Don't make a sound. Don't let it hear you. Consistently the same penmanship, always unveiled during nursery repaintings. A forensic linguist compared the writing in photographs to samples from Alina Blackwood's diaries. More chilling were the handprints uniform in size and placement over decades, despite different children inhabiting the house. The investigation took a darker turn when the detective persuaded the current homeowners to permit ground-penetrating radar in the basement. The technician identified anomalies in the readings, 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each roughly child-sized. Workers broke through the concrete, exposing a grim revelation: 5 small sets of remains arranged in a circle. Forensic analysis indicated the children had perished during Alina's ownership of the house. Each child still bore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 orphans who had purportedly absconded. The detective directed the application of luminol throughout the nursery. In the darkness, handprints glowed on every wall beneath layers of paint, invisible to the naked eye. Hundreds of them at varying heights, as though the children had been attempting to escape. Alina's journals, retrieved from county archives, unveiled her twisted rationale. She believed orphan children possessed a unique spiritual essence. By confining them in the hidden chamber, she aimed to tap into their life force to prolong her own existence. The children had etched their warnings into the wall using fingernails and bits of metal, hoping future inhabitants would uncover their fate. The case concluded with the proper burial of the 5 victims. Their names were finally recorded not as runaways, but as victims of foul play. The house sat vacant thereafter, the expectant couple refusing to step foot inside even to collect their belongings. Detective Klein submitted her final report, inclusive of photos of the handprints illuminated by luminol and the message beneath the paint. She remarked that while justice had been served for the original victims, an inexplicable presence lingered in that house, something that persisted in reaching out through layers of paint and time. The nursery walls were raised during cleanup, yet workers reported hearing children's voices whispering from the rubble. Each one refused to return after their shift ended. The house was ultimately condemned, another cold case relegated to a dusty cabinet, a tangible resolution, yet spiritual queries that would forever remain unanswered. The detective retained one photograph from the investigation, 5 luminol handprints illuminating the darkness, a haunting reminder that certain crimes leave indelible marks that no amount of fresh paint can conceal. Story 20: The Enigmatic Doll. In the depths of the attic, concealed beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, weathered by time, possessed a gaze of unyielding cobalt blue eyes. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, regarded it with bemusement, dismissing it as just another forgotten relic of the past. Little did they know, that night would mark the beginning of an inexplicable tale. As they retired to bed, a subtle unease settled in the air. The stillness of the night lingered, stretching into an eerie silence. When dawn broke, the doll had vanished from the attic, only to reappear at the foot of their bed, a silent sentinel in the dim light. Sarah and Michael had acquired the Victorian house at auction, captivated by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure. Unbeknownst to them, the dwelling harbored a history fraught with secrets and shadows, drawing them unwittingly into its enigmatic narrative. Detective Rachel Winters, on a crisp autumn morning, received a chilling call. The scene she encountered was one of macabre precision, the female victim arranged in a contorted pose, eyes wide with terror, while the male victim seemed to have met his end in a desperate attempt to flee. Meticulously, Detective Winters cataloged the scene, noting the deliberate arrangement that seemed to mimic a doll plucked from a display case. The absence of forced entry or signs of struggle only deepened the mystery shrouding the tragic events. As the investigation unfolded, a tapestry of unsettling accounts emerged from the neighbors, a flickering shadow at an upstairs window, the ethereal laughter of a child echoing through the vacant house. Each testimony added a layer of disquiet to the enigma enveloping the case. Forensic analysis unveiled a trail of vintage fibers, reminiscent of antique doll clothing, clustering around the victims, and the attic a disquieting revelation that hinted at a spectral presence lingering within the confines of the house. Delving into the annals of the property's past, Detective Winters unearthed a haunting pattern: previous owners meeting untimely demises under peculiar circumstances, their deaths cloaked in inexplicable anomalies and eerie occurrences. A faded newspaper clipping revealed the specter of a doll maker and his tragic daughter, their lives intertwined with the house's dark legacy. The final creation of the doll maker, a doll said to mirror his lost child, emerged as a nexus linking the past to the present. In a hidden compartment beneath the attic floorboards, old photographs whispered of arcane secrets, the dollmaker's collection frozen in time, with one doll standing out, its uncanny likeness to the one discovered by Sarah and Michael sending shivers down Detective Winters' spine. Infrared scans unveiled spectral handprints trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, accompanied by an enigmatic residue, a fusion of porcelain dust and unidentifiable organic matter, a spectral fingerprint of a presence that defied conventional explanation. A chance encounter with a descendant of the doll maker unveiled whispered family lore of esoteric rituals and forbidden arts, hinting at a malevolent force bound within the doll, a force yearning to transcend the boundaries of its porcelain vessel. The case, mired in the shadows of the supernatural, defied resolution as conventional avenues of investigation faltered in the face of the inexplicable. Detective Winters, haunted by the enigma, safeguarded the doll as evidence, only to awaken to a baffling disappearance that defied all logic. The house, tainted by its troubled past, passed into new hands, its attic a barren expanse save for a solitary blanket folded in quiet solitude. The doll, a phantom of the night, eluded capture, ensconced within the whispers of a chilling legend that echoed through the corridors of time. Detective Winters, burdened by the weight of the unsolved mystery, retreated from the fray, bearing with her a solemn memento, a photograph of the dollmaker and his eerie creations, a testament to a saga that defied comprehension. The new owners, wary of the house's dark history, chose to leave the attic undisturbed, a sanctuary untouched by the specter of the past. Yet on hushed evenings, whispers of a spectral presence lingered, a gentle laughter echoing through the stillness, a reminder of a tale lost to the shadows of the night. Story 21. In the quiet stillness of the night, a single wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, capturing her attention with a subtle creak. Intrigued, she knelt down, her fingers delicately tracing the edges of the loose board. The floor, once thought solid, now whispered of hidden secrets beneath its surface. With cautious determination, she lifted the boards, unveiling a dark and narrow space that lay concealed beneath her new dwelling. As her eyes adjusted to the dimness, shapes began to materialize in the shadows. A mattress, a chair, and nestled in the corner, a weathered notebook adorned with pages filled with a singular name, her name repeated endlessly. Detective Morgan Reed stood by Sarah Coleman's side, her presence a steady anchor amidst the unsettling discovery that lay before them. Sarah's gaze pierced the darkness below, her eyes reflecting a terror that transcended mere surprise. It was a violation of safety, an intrusion of malevolent intent into what should have been a sanctuary of new beginnings. "Do not disturb anything further," Detective Reed's voice, calm yet resolute, cautioned. With a click, her flashlight pierced the shadows, revealing walls adorned with surveillance photograph snapshots of Sarah's daily life, captured in secret. The eerie chamber, a shrine to obsession, had remained hidden beneath Sarah's feet, unbeknownst to her. The small cottage had been purchased from the estate of an elderly recluse named Walter Green, a man who had left no heirs behind. The property, vacant for months, had beckoned Sarah with promises of charm and renovation, concealing the sinister truth that lurked beneath its floorboards. "I never crossed paths with him, the previous owner," Sarah murmured. "The neighbors spoke of his reclusive nature. I was told the basement access had been sealed off long ago. That was what the inspection report stated." The arrival of crime scene investigators with their tools and cameras marked the beginning of a meticulous process to uncover the secrets that had been hidden for so long. Forensic examinations revealed a multitude of fingerprints, all belonging to Walter Green, scattered throughout the concealed chamber. The timeline that emerged painted a haunting picture. Walter had been observing Sarah for years, blending into the backdrop of her life without her ever noticing his presence. The fixation appears to have been escalating, the department psychologist shared during a briefing. The transition from fantasy to tangible action is evident in the meticulous preparations found in the hidden room. Detective Reed's inquiries led her to a former colleague of Walter's, a man who bore witness to the unsettling evolution of his fixation on Sarah. "Walter spoke of her, you know," the man confessed, his demeanor uneasy. "He believed she was meant for him. I dismissed it as harmless infatuation at the time." With a newfound lead in hand, Reed obtained a warrant to search Walter's workplace locker, uncovering a key that unlocked a storage unit registered in his name. The metallic door of the unit screeched open, revealing a chilling replica of Sarah's former life furniture, decor, even a mannequin fashioned in her likeness. The calendar, marked with a foreboding date, hinted at a sinister plan that had been halted by Walter's sudden demise. The puzzle pieces of Walter's disturbed past began to fall into place, revealing a history of obsession and delusion that had resurfaced in his final years. The echoes of Walter's turbulent past reverberated through the room as Reed laid out the evidence before her colleagues. In his mind, they were destined to be together, she explained, the weight of the truth heavy in her words. Could a chance encounter have sparked this twisted fixation? They wondered, grappling with the enigma of Walter's obsession with Sarah. Haunted by the specter of what could have been, Sarah made the decision to part ways with the house, a sanctuary tainted by the shadows of a man's distorted desires. As she stood in the empty living room one last time, a shiver ran down her spine, the lingering fear of the unknown gripping her heart. The chapter closed with Walter's passing, the case officially labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, a chilling reminder of the dangers that had once lurked unseen beneath the floorboards. Sarah, now a survivor of a nightmare she never knew existed, embarked on a journey to rebuild her life, forever changed by the brush with darkness that had come so close to claiming her. The cottage found new owners, unaware of the hidden room's secrets as life carried on its ceaseless rhythm. The hidden chamber was sealed off, the floorboards replaced, but for those who bore witness to the tale, the memory of the room beneath the floor lingered as a cautionary whisper of the dangers that dwell in the shadows, of the monsters that slip through the cracks, and the resilience of those who emerge from the depths, forever altered by the dance with the unknown. Story 22. In a quiet town nestled at the edge of the woods, there existed a house shrouded in mystery, a house untouched by time. The townsfolk never spoke of it, for it stood isolated, its windows darkened, its porch weary from the weight of ages. No one laid claim to it, and its origins slipped from memory like a whisper on the wind. One day, a group of hikers strayed too close to the enigmatic house. As they approached, they beheld an eerie sight: names carved into the wooden siding, etched deep as if to serve as ominous markers. And at the very bottom of this haunting list, a name unknown to them all glared back, fresh and untouched by the passage of time. It was a name that sent shivers through their souls as one of them hesitantly whispered, "That name belongs to me." When night blanketed the land, a call came through to the authorities, a mere mention of a routine trespassing incident. The caller was Mason Wright, the lead hiker who had stumbled upon his own name etched into the forsaken house. The responding officers anticipated a simple case of adolescent mischief, a mere prank among companions. Little did they know what awaited them in the shadows. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as darkness draped the forest in its cloak. Her flashlight pierced the obscurity, casting light upon the weathered facade of the dwelling. The names of 27 individuals adorned the eastern wall, some faded with age, others freshly carved, and at the base, Mason Wright, the inscription still fragrant with the scent of fresh-cut wood. "I've never set foot here before," Mason declared, his words mingling with the frosty breath in the chilly air. "I cannot fathom how my name came to be here." And so the investigation commenced, delving into the backgrounds of each name listed. What they uncovered sent chills down their spines. Every name belonged to a soul reported missing over the span of 4 decades, each disappearance linked to solitary hikes in the woods. Some cases had grown cold with time, while others remained open, all bearing the same unsettling detail: the vanished had ventured into the woods alone and never returned. Forensic experts meticulously documented each carving, noting the nuances in depth, technique, and weathered appearance. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, dated back 37 years to a tale of a young woman who vanished without a trace while exploring these very woods. The investigators found naught but a lone hiking boot by a babbling brook. As Detective Keller probed deeper, Mason's account remained unwavering. He professed no ties to the area beyond his recent hike with college comrades, chosen at random from an online suggestion. His background yielded no connections to the other names adorning the enigmatic house. The focus shifted to Mason's companions, particularly Emily Chen, the group's photographer. Upon scrutinizing the images she had captured along their trek, analysts discerned a disquieting presence, a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 distinct photographs. A tall, slender specter, always obscured by the veil of trees. "We encountered no one else on our journey," Emily asserted. "We would have remembered." With a heavy heart, Detective Keller directed a search of the house's interior. While the dwelling appeared abandoned, the basement harbored a chilling secret, a macabre display of personal effects belonging to the missing hikers, meticulously arranged on wooden shelves, each item labeled with a name matching those on the exterior wall. The evidence technicians painstakingly cataloged the items, unveiling bloodstains beneath the harsh glow of ultraviolet light, remnants of attempts to scrub away the grim reminders of past horrors. Though no bodies slumbered beneath the house, cadaver dogs alerted persistently to the dense forest beyond. As the investigation unfolded, Mason's behavior took a peculiar turn. He reported eerie incidents of susurrus outside his abode, fresh footprints leading to his door but vanishing upon return, shadowy figures haunting the streets. Despite police protection, Mason's paranoia burgeoned, casting a pall over his world. The breakthrough arrived with the unearthing of hidden land records from county archives. The house had once belonged to a recluse named Victor Blackwood, a hunter who had vanished 15 years prior, his disappearance swept under the rug. Detective Keller secured a warrant to explore deeper into the surrounding wilderness. Venturing forth, the search party stumbled upon a network of primitive hunting blinds strategically positioned along well-trodden trails. Within one of these blinds lay a journal brimming with meticulous notes, observations of hikers, their paths, belongings, and routines. The entries evolved from hunting strategies for beasts to chilling accounts of humans as prey, with detailed plans for their collection. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned multiple jurisdictions, deploying helicopters equipped with thermal imaging and tactical units scouring every nook and cranny. Yet the elusive hunter remained a specter in the wind. Meanwhile, Mason withdrew from the world, his whereabouts a mystery. During a subsequent sweep of Blackwood's abode, forensic experts unearthed a sinister workshop concealed behind a false wall, a chamber housing woodworking tools, vials of preservatives, and a freshly carved wooden piece bearing a name yet to be affixed to the exterior wall. A name that struck fear in Detective Keller's heart. It belonged to the lead forensic technician who had scrutinized the house. With a shroud of surveillance enshrouding the dwelling, every approach was monitored, every motion scrutinized. The stage was set, and one fateful night the sensors blared an alert, capturing a figure slinking from the shadows, a towering, gaunt silhouette moving with an eerie grace. Tactical teams swooped in, only for the cameras to falter briefly, losing sight of the phantom. When vision was restored, the figure had evaporated into the night. To this day, the house stands vigil under unrelenting watch. Mason and the forensic technician vanished without a trace, leaving behind a tapestry of unsolved mysteries. The search continues, with fresh resources allocated as reports of similar disappearances trickle in from distant forested realms. The names etched on the wall have become a whispered legend among law enforcers, a tale that some dare not speak and others avoid entirely. And the local hikers, wary of adding their names to that foreboding list, steer clear of the house at the edge of the woods, where silence reigns supreme. Story 23. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail for Sarah Miller. It was an ordinary brass key, worn with time, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. Although Sarah didn't recognize it, there was something strangely familiar about it. When she tried the key in every lock she owned, not a single one turned. It didn't belong to her. Perplexed, Sarah placed the key on her coffee table. Suddenly, the old grandfather clock in the hallway let out a single, hollow chime, despite being broken for years. This peculiar occurrence prompted Sarah to report the incident to the authorities, setting off a chain of events that would unravel a disturbing mystery in the tranquil neighborhood. Initially, the responding officer dismissed Sarah's concerns as a simple mistake, a key sent in the mail. However, Sarah couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, placing it in a small evidence bag that would later become crucial in a complex investigation. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator from the Special Victims Unit, received the case file during the morning briefing. As he examined the unassuming brass key on his desk, a sense of unease washed over him. Background checks on Sarah revealed no criminal history, no suspicious activities in her financial records, phone logs, or social media. She seemed to be an innocent recipient of an ominous gift. Forensic analysis found only Sarah's fingerprints on the key, and the envelope provided no leads, just a generic postmark. The key itself, a standard Schlage, showed signs of age, but it was when Detective Harmon ran the key's unique pattern through the department database that a chilling connection emerged. 7 years prior, a cold case had documented an identical key pattern linked to a storage unit where horrifying evidence had been found: blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and photographs of unconscious women. The original investigation had hit a dead end, lacking sufficient evidence to identify a suspect. As Harmon delved deeper into the case, he discovered a dark trail leading to Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's who had mysteriously vanished 6 years ago. Jenkins, a man of few traces, had a disturbing past that unfolded with each piece of evidence uncovered. The investigation intensified as it became evident that Jenkins had carefully orchestrated a series of abductions and heinous crimes over almost a decade. Sarah, unknowingly drawn into this macabre web, found herself at the center of a horrifying revelation. The manhunt for Jenkins expanded nationwide, with authorities unearthing a hidden cabin that held the sinister secrets of his crimes. Inside, a room concealed beneath the floorboards revealed a chilling collection of brass keys, each engraved with a name and date. The keys unlocked a nightmarish truth: additional victims, previously unknown, buried behind the cabin. As the search for Jenkins reached a fever pitch, a wildlife photographer captured a sighting of him in the wilderness. The subsequent standoff ended tragically, with Jenkins taking his own life. His journal, found beside him, detailed his atrocities and singled out Sarah as a recipient of his twisted attention. The investigation uncovered 32 victims in total, bringing closure to families who had long awaited answers. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, never returned home, haunted by the darkness that had brushed so close to her life. The case of Harold Jenkins, known as the Keymaster, stands as a chilling reminder of the horrors that can lurk behind a facade of normalcy. His meticulously kept records serve as a stark warning, urging vigilance against predators hiding in plain sight. In the aftermath, psychological researchers continue to study Jenkins' writings, searching for insights to prevent similar tragedies. And as a collection of brass keys sits in an evidence locker, they bear silent witness to lives lost, each key a reminder of the devastating truth hidden behind seemingly ordinary appearances. Story 24. The old house had sat silent, untouched by life for what seemed like an eternity. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that lingered in the musty air. But when the new occupants crossed the threshold, they were met with a locked bedroom door, a puzzle waiting to be unraveled. With a gentle push and a creak, the door swung open, revealing a room frozen in time. Dust danced in the stagnant air, a silent witness to the passage of years. Yet amidst the stillness, a sense of unease crept in, shrouding the room in a veil of mystery. The bed stood neatly made, untouched by time. The mirror gleamed free of any blemish, and there upon the desk a lone candle stood vigil, its wax a remnant of forgotten flames, frozen in time like tears turned to ice. But it was the notebook that beckoned, its pages whispering secrets of a past long gone. Detective Morgan delved into its depths, each stroke of the pen revealing a tale of intrigue and deceit. Elise Winters, a name etched in ink, her words a haunting echo of a life interrupted. The notebook spoke of shadows lurking in the night, of a relentless watchfulness that pierced the darkness. "He's watching me," the words cried out, a plea for help lost in the void. The final entry, a chilling testament to fear and foreboding, a warning left unheeded. As the room yielded its secrets, the truth emerged like a specter from the shadows. Elise, a paralegal entangled in a web of deception, her pursuit of justice leading to a fate sealed in silence. The room bore witness to her struggle, a silent testament to a life cut short. Forensic technicians combed the room for clues, each fingerprint a ghostly trace of the past. The scent of dust mingled with something darker, a faint reminder of secrets buried deep within the walls. And then a discovery, a hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard, a key to unlock a truth long hidden. Documents revealed a web of conspiracy, a trail of deceit leading to powerful men with blood on their hands. The truth emerged in whispers and shadows, a tale of greed and betrayal woven into the fabric of the room. Elise's voice echoed through the recordings, a ghostly presence guiding the way to justice. As the puzzle unraveled, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man named Harriman, his hands stained with guilt. The room bore witness to his crimes, a silent sentinel in the night. In the end, justice prevailed, though Elise's voice remained forever silenced. Her legacy lived on in the room she never truly left, a testament to her unwavering pursuit of truth. The house stood empty once more, a silent guardian of secrets long buried. The light in the upstairs window flickered, a beacon of remembrance for a woman whose spirit lingered in the shadows. And so the house slept, its mysteries laid bare but never forgotten. The echoes of the past whispered through its halls, a lullaby of justice for the restless souls who dwelled within its walls. Story 25. The aged apartment held its secrets, pipes that groaned, floorboards that whispered stories of years past. The new tenant, Sarah, felt a chill in the air as she lay awake at night, listening to the footsteps echoing above her. They were not the random sounds of settling, but a purposeful rhythm that danced across the ceiling like a ghostly waltz. Sarah lived on the top floor, yet the footsteps persisted, slow and deliberate, as if someone unseen was pacing back and forth in a hidden realm above her sanctuary. One night she summoned her courage and tapped the ceiling with a broomstick, hoping to break the spell. The footsteps ceased, plunging the room into a heavy silence, and then, in defiance of logic, a single knock reverberated from within the ceiling itself. Sarah kept the strange occurrence to herself, brushing it off as the quirks of an old building. She drowned out the haunting footsteps with the blare of her television, seeking solace in the artificial glow of the screen. But the phantom footfalls persisted, a spectral presence tracing invisible paths above her head in the dead of night. Detective Morris entered the scene like a shadow slipping through cracks in the walls. A maintenance worker's discovery of a hidden crawlspace outside Sarah's apartment set the gears of investigation in motion. Behind a section of drywall, a forbidden passage emerged, leading to a clandestine chamber that defied the laws of architecture. Within this secret enclave, a trove of unsettling artifacts awaited a blanket that whispered of unseen dreams, a notebook filled with meticulous observations of Sarah's every move. The superintendent's call to the police marked the beginning of a descent into a realm of shadows and whispers. The notebook spoke of an unseen watcher, a silent observer who had woven a web of surveillance around Sarah's life. Fingerprints found in the hidden passages defied identification, casting a veil of mystery over the unfolding drama. Forensic teams unraveled a labyrinth of hidden corridors woven into the very bones of the building, a network that spanned decades and connected multiple apartments. Yet it was Sarah's domain that served as the focal point of this clandestine theater, a stage where the watcher's gaze lingered with unsettling intensity. Former residents whispered of unseen eyes and restless spirits, of a presence that haunted the edges of their reality. The puzzle pieces began to fall into place when microscopic blood spatter hinted at a dark secret buried within the walls. Martin Weaver's vanishing act became a focal point of the investigation, a thread that led back to a quiet man named Edward who had vanished into the night like a shadow fleeing from the light. Edward's enigmatic past unraveled like a tapestry of darkness, revealing a pattern of silence and solitude that spanned decades. A cabin in the wilderness unveiled a gallery of horrors, a shrine to lost souls, a testament to Edward's twisted obsessions. Images of former residents stared back from the walls, their eyes hollow with unspeakable dread. Maps and journals chronicled a descent into madness, a journey through the shadows of a fractured mind. As the earth yielded its grim secrets, the truth emerged from the shadows like a specter rising from the grave. Edward's legacy of terror had left a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams in its wake. The manhunt began, a race against time to capture a ghost who had slipped through the cracks of reality. And in the silence that followed, Detective Morris found himself haunted by the echoes of footsteps that lingered in the darkness. The memory of Sarah, lost to the shadows, whispered through the night like a siren's call. As the world slept, he listened to the quiet hum of the night, wondering if somewhere in the darkness, another watcher waited, unseen and unheard. The tale of Sarah Coleman, lost to the shadows, remained a mystery shrouded in silence, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the hidden corners of the world. Story 26, The Mystery of the Doppelganger. She wiped away the steam on the mirror, gazing at her reflection, but something felt amiss. Her appearance seemed normal, her attire unchanged. Yet an unsettling feeling crept over her the longer she stared. A flicker caught her eye, a movement not her own. When she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. Thus began the enigmatic case of Rebecca Thorne, a tale that would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided solo in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave. Known for her methodical nature and reserved demeanor, she maintained a polite distance from neighbors while adhering to her routines. As a meticulous data analyst in a mid-sized firm, her life revolved around precision and order. No one could have foreseen that she would become the focal point of one of the most enigmatic criminal inquiries in recent memory. The initial disturbances appeared benign. Objects in Rebecca's home were subtly rearranged, no items missing, just subtly shifted. A coffee mug relocated, books rearranged, her toothbrush out of place. Initially attributing these anomalies to fatigue from long hours scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh lights, Rebecca dismissed them as mere lapses in memory. Detective Marion Shaw received the first complaint after Rebecca, following weeks of unsettling occurrences, finally reached out to the authorities. The initial assessment suggested no criminal activity, leaning more towards mental health concerns. Shaw noted the oddities but cataloged them among non-urgent cases. There was no concrete evidence, Shaw later testified. No signs of forced entry, no missing belongings, just a woman sensing something amiss in her abode. The pivotal moment transpired with the bathroom mirror incident. During her subsequent contact with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt under constant surveillance even in solitude. This time she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, pointed at her front door. The video unearthed a revelation that sent a shiver down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy footage depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning, only for an identical figure to enter her apartment 20 minutes later using a key. Forensic analysts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or manipulation, but found none. The intruder mimicked Rebecca's movements, attire, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. Yet, according to time-stamped records from her workplace security system, Rebecca was already present in her office across town. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw disclosed to her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Miss Thorne and can replicate her with eerie precision." The investigation escalated as fingerprints within the apartment matched solely Rebecca's, devoid of foreign DNA. Neighbors reported nothing amiss, simply observing Rebecca's regular comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, mentioned a peculiar encounter where Rebecca returned home, but failed to acknowledge her a deviation from her usual behavior, though not deemed alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disruptions in a journal. Minor alterations in her home escalated. Food vanished from her fridge without recollection. Her computer displayed searches she hadn't initiated. Most disconcerting were the self-portraits on her phone, images resembling her, yet taken without her knowledge. In some, her expression appeared subtly awry, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I feel as though I'm descending into madness," Rebecca confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this facade." A breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger exclusively entered during Rebecca's scheduled absences for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined activities with predictable durations. "An individual intimately acquainted with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's targeted surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist postulated a fixation theory, a person fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, emulating her existence, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such fixations, though rare, were documented in psychological literature. The perpetrator typically experienced a psychological rupture and fixated on a target embodying qualities they desired: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The investigation honed in on a former colleague of Rebecca, Lily Winters, dismissed due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily, closely intertwined with Rebecca's work, often remarked on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca unsettling emails, one stating, "We could be identical," and another, "At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to scour Lily's abode, unraveling a chilling revelation. One room mirrored Rebecca's bedroom, adorned with photos, countless snapshots of Rebecca entering her home, shopping, socializing, all captured unbeknownst to her. A closet housed duplicates of Rebecca's attire, makeup matching her preferred brands on a vanity, alongside detailed notes on her behaviors, speech patterns, and daily routines. Particularly unnerving were the practice videos, showcasing Lily mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions, evolving from clumsy attempts to near-perfect replication. She aspired to assume my identity, a shocked Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. She wasn't merely imitating me, she sought to erase me. Forensic analysts uncovered sophisticated tools for crafting key copies and replicating electronic access cards. Lily meticulously tracked Rebecca's movements, maintaining a calendar with precise predictions of her schedule. Yet Lily's ultimate objective remained elusive. Journals discovered in her residence contained rambling entries, oscillating between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as both me and her in a single passage. The final entry sent chills down investigators' spines. Soon, only one of us will prevail. The stronger version shall endure. Upon authorities moving to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Signs of a rushed departure littered her apartment drawers left ajar, certain technology missing. A nationwide alert ensued. Rebecca entered protective custody, relocated to a secure haven under constant surveillance. For weeks, authorities monitored every locale linked to her past life. Lily remained elusive. The inquiry took a disconcerting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca was sighted entering the premises despite being on leave. Footage corroborated the sighting. An individual identical to Rebecca accessed the building with a valid ID, proceeded to her former workstation, delved into her files for 40 minutes before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained sheltered in a secure location, unable to have been at the office. The unsettling truth became evident. Lily hadn't fled, she had executed her plan. Living as Rebecca, she seamlessly transitioned into her life while the authentic Rebecca remained in seclusion. The case remains unresolved. Lily Winters remains at large while Rebecca Thorne forged a new identity in an undisclosed locale. Detective Shaw keeps a photograph on her desk, two strikingly similar women. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, the subtle nuances distinguishing one from the other. The most chilling aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits is not someone resembling you or sounding like you. It's the desire to become you so fervently that they obliterate themselves in the process. Identity transcends mere appearances. It's our most cherished possession, safeguarded against those who seek to usurp it. Story 27. The parcel arrived mysteriously, devoid of any traceable information, a plain cardboard box, slightly damp from the morning mist. It was not intended for her, the address correct, but the name unknown. Sarah Miller hesitated, knowing she should have disregarded it, left it untouched on her doorstep. Yet curiosity beckoned her forth. With cautious hands, she peeled back the tape, anticipating mundane contents like books or clothing. However, what lay within was far from ordinary. Nestled inside was a VHS tape, accompanied by a solitary sticky note that read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic tape in her hands, sensing an unusual weight to it, as if burdened with secrets untold. Her fingers traced the weathered edges, feeling the rough imperfections of the casing. The handwritten note bore the marks of urgency, each stroke pressed firmly onto the paper. Meanwhile, the tranquil suburban setting outside carried on its usual rhythm a distant dog's bark, the laughter of children at play, the steady hum of a lawnmower slicing through the morning air. Unaware of the enigma that had just been delivered, Sarah brought the package inside, placing it on her kitchen counter. The name on the box, Daniel Whitaker, meant nothing to her. Having resided in the house for years, she had never encountered mail addressed to that name before. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had long since departed, leaving behind no trace of a connection to this mysterious package. Uncertainty and unease gnawed at Sarah as she glanced at her old VCR, a relic of days gone by. There was something about the tape that called out to her, a puzzle shrouded in worn plastic. Against her instinct, Sarah inserted the tape into the machine. Initially, static flickered on the screen, gradually sharpening into focus. A dimly lit room materialized, illuminated by a single lamp. The camera angle seemed askew as if hastily positioned. A man sat in a wooden chair, his features obscured by shadows at first. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," his voice resonated quietly yet firmly. "If you are watching this, then someone has found you, and they will find me as well." As he leaned forward, the shadows receded, revealing a face marked by exhaustion and vigilance, sunken eyes, stubbled jaw, disheveled hair. "I am innocent of her murder," he asserted, "but they have fabricated evidence against me, planted false trails of my involvement. I need you to understand that I never laid a hand on her." The camera trembled slightly as he adjusted it, offering glimpses of the bare room, a stark setting, devoid of comfort, a testament to a life lived on the edge. "They framed me," Daniel continued, desperation creeping into his voice. "The authorities will claim that I knew her, that we quarreled, that witnesses heard our altercations. But it's all a lie. I only saw Catherine Walsh on the news, her life stolen, her death wrongly pinned on me." Detective Eliza Ramirez sat in her office, pondering the fifth identical VHS tape that had surfaced. Each tape bore the same urgent plea from Daniel Whitaker, the prime suspect in the murder of Catherine Walsh, a man who had vanished without a trace after her demise. Initially, the case seemed straightforward: a young woman strangled in her own home, evidence pointing squarely at Whitaker. But the tapes cast a shadow of doubt over everything. As Ramirez delved deeper, she unearthed unsettling truths. Catherine Walsh had been embroiled in a whistleblower case against PharmaCorp, a formidable pharmaceutical giant with ties to the government. Evidence surfaced of data manipulation in clinical trials, concealing dangerous side effects in a new drug slated for release. Walsh had intended to testify, armed with incriminating documents that would expose the company's malfeasance. The detective's investigation led her down a labyrinth of deceit and manipulation. The DNA evidence against Whitaker appeared too precise, strategically placed to implicate him. Witness statements seemed rehearsed, lacking authenticity. Surveillance footage inexplicably corrupted during crucial moments. Ramirez sensed a sinister force at play, orchestrating a grand deception. Days later, Sarah Miller received another package, a trove of incriminating documents from PharmaCorp, bearing Walsh's digital signature. Each page unveiled a web of corruption, validating Catherine's claims and implicating powerful figures within the company. As Ramirez connected with other recipients of the tapes, a pattern emerged, linking Whitaker's plight to a larger conspiracy. Whitaker's tapes revealed the truth behind his entanglement in a scheme orchestrated by PharmaCorp's security chief, a former detective turned corporate enforcer. His journals chronicled the elaborate framing of Whitaker, the suppression of evidence, and the orchestration of a cover-up. With Sarah's keen observation, they identified a crucial clue in the reflection of a storage unit on one of the tapes, a breakthrough that led to the exposure of the entire conspiracy. Justice was served not through dramatic confrontation, but through the meticulous assembly of evidence. 3 executives faced indictment, the security chief turned informant, and the tainted drug halted in its tracks. Whitaker emerged from seclusion, a shadow of his former self, vindicated yet scarred by his ordeal. In a poignant encounter with Sarah, he revealed the algorithmic randomness that had chosen her as a recipient, a stranger untainted by the lies spun against him. As they stood on her porch, the threshold where truth had found its way through misdirection, Sarah posed a question that lingered in the air. Why me? Whitaker met her gaze with weary resolve. The algorithm sought those unconnected to my plight, those who could discern truth amidst the fabrications. Your address, though mistaken, became the conduit for justice to prevail. The VHS tapes, relics of a clandestine saga, served as tangible reminders that truth often arrives in unexpected guises, awaiting the curious souls willing to peer beneath the surface. As night descended, Sarah and Whitaker parted ways, their paths forever altered by a convergence of chance and resilience, a testament to the intricate dance between reality and illusion.